into the race here today. So maybe some of that tire conversation goes out the window when the temperatures are down where they are. But that said, I think we're all kind of waiting to figure out ourselves, and we'll watch as the teams try and sort through that here in today's race.
Thanks, Ryan, for that. Arjuna down in the pit lane. We can hear that the engines have fired, and therefore it's time to wrap up the Michelin countdown to green. We'll revisit our Porsche keys to the race within the 2 hours and 40 minutes. This brings pretty much to a close our RS2 Michelin countdown to green. We'll be back exclusively on RS2 for post-race tech. The hashtag is Michelin PRT. And now we're about to go live in sound and vision. Also, if you're travelling around, please don't try and watch it on your phone. Stay with the audio. If you're in the US, you can listen on Sirius XM channel 206. Join the conversation at IMSA Radio, and that brings you straight into the Ford Performance Global Broadcast Centre. GTs only at the Michelin GT Challenge at VIR, and the race is live next.
The WeatherTech Sports Car Championship on IMSA Radio.
At Virginia International Raceway, just a beautiful facility here, about 3¼ miles, 160 mile an hour, hardcore racing. We are ready to go. We're at this Michelin GT Challenge at Virginia International Raceway. Waiting for the drop of the green flag. There it is. The vendor waves the green. We're racing in VIR. This place is not to be messed with. This place bites. 14 cars the inside lane there. Going for the next one. He has to give it up. He gets to the right side. Tries to break a little bit deeper into turn one. Gets the elbows out. As Paul Newman said, this is heaven.
This will go down in history as one of the finest road courses, if not the United States, the world.
Here we go at VIR.
Well, that's got the blood rushing, hasn't it? Beautiful afternoon here for the anti-penultimate round of the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. It's the Michelin GT Challenge at VIR in the Ford Global Broadcast Centre. John Hindorf and Ryan Marine down in the pit lane, which up until very recently was absolutely chock full of very ardent sports car enthusiasts. Ryan Kankaparty, I'm mixing up my two co-presenters. Arjuna Kankaparty, we'll talk to him in a moment, but first a little bit about this track. It's been around for quite some time, although at the end of the 1990s we almost lost this track altogether, and only by the intervention of the current ownership group in 2000 have we got this track back to any kind of racing opportunities, and since then it's held some great races. Turn one down at the Horseshoe, the heaviest braking area on the circuit, possibly at the old Oak Tree turn up at the south end of things, and if you're a little bit brave, into the roller coaster at the top of the hill at turn 13. Let's quickly check in with Arjuna Kankaparty. I just want to make sure that everybody's cleared the pit lane. Arjuna, are you in elegant isolation down in the pit lane?
I am indeed. The cars are all rumbling around the track, John, and we talked about this a bit in Countdown to Green. Without the prototypes here, a lot of the GT machines are expecting that it will be harder to pass. Not as many opportunities to take advantage of the traffic to make moves. And with the track temperature building, I know Ryan mentioned that it wasn't as warm as we were expecting, but I'm starting to sweat in my fire suit, which I think is going to mean the tarmac's going to start heating up and the driver's going to get into the thick of the action.
This track is fast. 3.27 miles and 17 corners. And as far as how hard you have to work the brakes, well, in their 50th year, Brembo supporting us here on IMSA Radio, on IMSA TV, with some brake facts about Virginia International Raceway. The technicians tell us that this is a 4 out of 5 difficulty rating. Now, they're not just deciding that over a cup of coffee. They're looking at the numbers on that. It will surprise you not at all to know that turn 1 is the hardest braking point. It's actually slightly downhill. You come over the top of a rise. 7 times you go to the brakes on this 3.5 mile lap, and down 105 miles an hour for the GTD cars into turn 1. That's how much you are scrubbing off, and that is 2.2 Gs as you are slowing down to go down into the right-hander at the horseshoe. Peak brake temperature, nearly 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit for these GTD cars. That's our Brembo brake facts. Congratulations on 50 glorious years of racing with Brembo. GTD pros at the front of the field, 10 of them. Dragon Speed Ferrari from 2 Paul Miller BMWs, from the 2 Chevy Corvettes, then the first of the Mustangs in 6th position. From 11th on down, it's the Pro-Am category, the GTDs, although Jack Hawksworth, Russell Ward and Onofrio Triazzi and Casper Stevenson qualified ahead of half of the GT Pro field. And though that's Lexus, Mercedes, Ferrari and Aston Martin Vantage all in the fight at the front of the GTD field. Those are the cars with the green number backgrounds, the GTD pros at the front of the field with the red number background. We have put 2 hours and 40 minutes onto the clock, and right now Giacomo Altoe leads as Bibendum waves the green flag for the start of the Michelin GT Challenge in VIR, and immediately swinging across to cover. A great start from Neil Verhagen as he gets the whole shot down to the first corner. And Giacomo Altoe is going to have to battle here with the other BMW. He's also got a Corvette right up his tailpipes as well as he goes through turn 3 and into the left hook at turn 4. Really feisty start and leading going on in the middle of the field with the number 65 of Fred Verviche and Marco Pompelli trading paint, or vinyl I suppose it is nowadays, and Aaron Telitz takes advantage of that. Somebody's off the track and taking out one of the WeatherTech sides further back. That looked like it was Fred Verviche for Ford Multimatic Motorsport. Did he get the car back on the track? Remember, those cars are running a black livery this weekend in tribute to the new liquid carbon finish on the ultimate Ford Mustang street car, the GTD limited edition. And one of those cars will be our safety car should we need it. We nearly needed it straight away there with the WeatherTech sign taking flight. It's landed off the track, thank goodness. Cold tyres, maybe cold brains in there as well. It was a little bit of both, I think, and maybe some contact for Fred Verviche from the Aaron Telitz driven Vassar Sullivan Lexus as they went through race control. We'll have a look at that. First lap then, about to be in the books. And how's this for BMW, for M-Power? They're celebrating an anniversary in the US this year, and they're pretty much side by side. Neil Verhagen and Dan Harper separated by a couple of tenths of a second. The Paul Miller Racing team start as they mean to go on. Madison Snow was very bullish in our Michelin countdown to green, speaking to Arjuna earlier on. And that's the kind of start to the race that they would have been hoping and praying for, Ryan Marie.
Oh, full course yellow is out just as we say that. But you're right, Paul Miller Racing a year ago started on pole and won from pole with Madison Snow as part of the driving lineup. But he's the only one of the 4 drivers for Paul Miller Racing that has ever made an IMSA start here at VIR before. It looks like debris on track. Turn 5 is the cause for the full course yellow. It will be a short yellow, and it's for that WeatherTech sign, I suspect, that was dislodged in the contact on the opening lap.
It's actually the other half of it, Ryan. The bit that went into the air went all the way over the track to driver's right. I don't think that's the problem. They're made of a light corrugated sandwich called Corex. and that's fine. The part that's the problem is the other side of it. It's like an A-frame, and that has stayed more or less where it had been placed, just beyond the curb on the driver's left at the apex of turn 5, but it's eased across onto those yellow and blue curbs, and I think that's what race control somewhat worried about. They'll also be worried about the sandbags that are there as well, because they can do damage if you run over them. Already track services from VIR are there and have picked up the offending remnants of the WeatherTech sign, and I presume they'll pick up the sandbags as well to make sure they don't cause a problem. So the big story at the start of the race, twofold, as at the sharp end of the field, BMW are first and second. Paul Sitter, Dragon Speed and Giacomo Altoe third from the two Corvette Racings, Antonio Garcia and Nicky Katzberg, fourth and fifth. They're in the same positions they started, as is Sebastian Priaulx. But in GTD, whilst Jack Hawksworth has held on to the top position from Paul, it's Triazi Competition in second, who've got ahead of Fred Verveech, who went off track, of course. Manny Franco now in third for Ferrari. Lamborghini Huracan in fourth for Wayne Taylor Racing. Alec Udell for DXDT in the Bosch Chevy Corvette. Number 36 in fifth. Where is Russell Ward, I hear you say? Well, he's dropped behind Aaron Telitz and Misha Goitberg. And he's down in 7th position in class, 17th overall from the front row. And I suspect, although I have to say I'm not entirely certain of this, Ryan, I suspect that was all down to those GTD Pro cars having the scrap ahead of them that delayed Russell, as we are behind the Ford GTD, the Ford Mustang GTD, in its incredible liquid carbon finish. As I say, the 64 and the 65 car have a bare carbon finish, which is just the weave of the carbon with the ultra lime on it. Not the start that Russell Ward wanted in defence of the championship lead at the moment, now down in 7th position, Ryan.
Yeah, that's almost a disaster for them. Again, we talk about how difficult it is to make passes. You can't count on a bunch of yellows to open up strategy options here in this race historically, and they've dropped from 2nd to 7th, as you point out. Manny Franco, though, let's give him a call. Had a solid but kind of quiet qualifying in 5th. He gains 2 positions. He now runs 3rd in GTD. I think one of the early stories of the day, just how he was ready to go immediately on the start. But most impressive of all, what the two BMWs did. Verhagen just blitzed by Altoe going into turn 1. That wasn't even a battle, really. And then Harper was able to find a way by a few corners later.
The Mustang GTD lights out and accelerates away using the awesome power of that V8. The class split is ongoing down the back straight. The pits did not open because we were within 15 minutes of the first green flag of the race. However, the pits will open as they come back to green right now. Minimum driver time is 10 minutes for the GTD Pros and 45 minutes for the GTDs. Two hours and 33 minutes to go as we go back to green after a bit of argy-bargy in the opening laps, and the two BMWs have controlled the restart very nicely indeed, with Neil Verhagen holding the lead further back down the field. It's been a bit of elbows out with the number 4 Corvette having just been passed on the restart. So Katzberg's lost a position. Seb Priaulx's gone up 1 to 5th position in the better placed of the two Mustangs. Fred Verveech, remember, with a little bit of a problem earlier on, but he will be back in line further down. He'll sit in 9th position as all of the GTD Pros were put in front of the GTD leader, Jack Hawksworth. Great sound of the variety of sports car and GT racing in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. V8s, flat 6s, mid, front, rear engine cars. V10s, of course, in the Lamborghini. Absolutely quality stuff. Cars that look and sound different, all playing on the same playing field and racing on the same playing field. Some smoke coming from either the gradient number 66, the silver Mustang, or the number 96 Turner BMW. Bit of a problem, I think, for Jensen Holtzman. He's either got a tyre rub or something is going on all the way up the back straight. There was some white smoke coming from between those two cars. And it looks like Fred Vervish is in the pit lane after that early incident. Onofrio Triazzi as well coming in. Those were the two cars that were closest together. And Jensen Holtzman, yeah, he dropped a wheel off at the top of the turn 14. In fact, there was a little touch side by side there as well. Let's go down for our first pit lane report of the race. Here's Arjuna with a Ford and a Ferrari in the pit lane early doors.
Well, I'm not seeing the Ferrari, John, so you're going to have to correct me if they did pit and I missed them. But the Ford number 65, just a quick clean of the radiator. Lots of grass on that car after the lap one excursion. They've topped the car off with fuel as well and headed back out onto track in that liquid carbon number 65.
Yes, absolutely. They were in the pit lane for just 32 seconds. My apologies, the Triazzi competition Ferrari did not come in the pit lane. It flashed up red on my timing screen for a moment, which normally signifies a pit lane caller. So Fred Vervish is back out, obviously now right at the back of everybody. The good news is, Ryan, he's got a clear track in front of him. So we'll see now what performance that number 65 car has, because he's about a quarter of a lap behind the rest of the field.
Yeah, 31 seconds behind Neil Verhagen, who leads the race overall. And Fred really got used up, I think, on the start of the race. First, it was fighting with Marco Mapelli, and Mapelli didn't really cut him a lot of slack in the run down toward a left hook, turn 4. And then after that, there was the contact with the Lexus, which appeared a bit more incidental. But tough start to the race regardless for the 65 in Vervish. In GTD, though, we mentioned the fact that Russell Ward had dropped down. What we neglected to mention was Casper Stevenson also had fallen back. Casper had qualified 3rd and now is shown in 10th. And that's where he restarted. So I think all of them were kind of caught up in that same chaos on the opening lap. And a few of the front runners, not just for the race win, but also those are 2 championship contenders in GTD that have had strife early.
I suppose if you're going to have a problem, Ryan, have it early. It gives you more time to recover.
True. Rather not have it at all, especially here at VIR, as you say. But if that's not an option, then yes, you might as well get it out of the way and hope that a yellow falls the right way to maybe bring you back into the mix.
So an early pit stop for Corvette number 4 to clear out the radiators just in the pit lane for 30-odd seconds. There was a splash of fuel there, but no time to change any tyres as far as we saw. We're hearing that race control are going to have a look at that incident between Fred Vervish in the number 65, now sitting down in 23rd position and 10th in class. And the other car involved there was Manny Franco for Conquest Racing, one of the GTD runners coming through, and also Manny Franco was with Triazzi, the 021. It was the number 12 that was involved. That's Jack Hawksworth, who was involved with the Corvette. Again, that was one of the GTD cars coming through. Onofrio Triazzi now leads in GTD. The Ferrari ahead of the pole-sitting Lexus. So it's Ferrari, Lexus, Ferrari from 9th position down. Both Lexus are in there. The GTD car is the better placed of the pair of them. So already race control, Ryan, having some work to do And given what we've been speaking about regarding contact, driver behaviour, we now wait to see what happens with the result of those investigations.
Well, I didn't see the 34 and the 021 at all, so can't really weigh in on that. But the 12 has been given an incident responsibility penalty for the contact, and it was with the 65 Ford. So that's the Fred Vervish car that was in the pit lane. Happy to say that the 4 Corvette is still running in decent position. But yeah, that is quick with the hook there from race control, and this is a message that's been sent, and same now for the leader in GTD, the 021 Triarci also has been hit with a penalty. That was the second incident that you chronicled a moment ago. So I think the message was sent in the drivers' meeting, and now it's being sent on the racetrack too, that race control will not brook any kind of questionable behavior on the heels of what happened in Elkhart Lake.
Yeah, my apologies. 65 Ford Multimatic Ford Mustang GD3 came in to get the radiators cleaned after that off-track excursion. Fred Vervish running at the back. I apologise if I worried Corvette fans there. So here are the two miscreants coming to serve their penalty. You've got 3 laps or 3 times past the start-finish line to get that done. They've decided to come in at the earliest opportunity. I'm just thinking back to that smoke that I saw coming out of the gradient number 66 car. Jensen Holtzman has continued and is now up to 9th position in class there. I just wonder if he was running across some of the oil dry preparation from earlier on today that was on the back straight. I'll take a look at that the next time we have cars going down the back straight, Madison Avenue, here at VIR. Hello everybody, if you are just joining us, we've had 15 minutes of action already, a very quick caution for debris after what can only be described as a fraught start to this GT only Michelin GT Challenge at VIR. And it all started in the midfield. Oh yeah, that was side-by-side contact that happened much earlier than I realised, that put Fred Vervish off, and it was indeed the pole-sitting Lexus from GTD, but also the 021 with contact as well, and they have been back into the pit lane. The incident at the top of the hill at the roller coaster between Jensen Holtzman, the Gradient Ford number 66, and the number 96 Turner BMW, that's under review as well. And that will be a drive-through for the Turner BMW. So I think your question and our musing, Ryan Marine, has been answered as early as 15 minutes into this race.
Yeah, this is clearly about sending a message here that any kind of dubious driving behavior will not be tolerated. And again, everyone was warned in the driver's meeting. Arjuna chronicled that in the pre-race, didn't he? And so message sent and received now with 3 drive-through penalties, and we're not even 20 minutes into the race.
Hello to Alan Prosser, working in the pub tonight, but has us on the big screen over there in a very beautiful part of the world, the borders of England and Wales. Good to have your company, Alan, tonight, and to all the customers there as well. Jerry Z is trackside, right where that incident happened here at VIR. Got a long drive home as well. And Chris Suku joining us as well with a multi-screen experience in Royal Leamington Spa in the centre of the Midlands of the UK. Now it's just coming on at 7:30 on Sunday evening, 8:30 in Europe, 2:30 here at VIR, near enough. The 2 BMWs still leading. Now let's find out what happened with the 96 Turner BMW, just squeezing down onto Jensen Holtzman. That could have gone either way. Jensen lost a few positions, managed to hold on to it in the 66 Gradient car. So I think we know where we stand. If you're a driver or a team member now, you're on the phone, you're on the radio to your drivers. and saying no contact at all. The race control, the patience tested perhaps too much last time out. Let's go down to Ferrari and to Daniel Serra, who's with Arjuna.
I was just asking Daniel if there was any word on the radio from Manny Franco after that bit of contact leading the race. Daniel, what's the word?
Apparently the car is okay. Manny is doing a good job, good few laps. He's on a good pace, so it's still too early. Let's see where we can finish.
I believe this is your first visit to VIR. What's the experience been like?
Yeah, it's my first time here. It's a very, very nice track. I like the last sector when you come to the last corner. It's a very nice track. Very difficult to overtake, so it's good to be in first place. Track position is very important here, so let's see.
Good luck for the race.
So that is the GTD leading co-driver. Conquest Racing's Ferrari, the number 34 car. If you're at the track or further afield, don't forget Andy Blackmore's brilliant spotter guide. Search Andy Blackmore spotter guides and that will get you to his page. There's also a link to it on IMSA.com. All of the liveries of the cars and their drivers. Off for Triarsi competition at the Oak Tree there, Ryan, in that battle for what is 20th and 21st, 11th and 12th in class. Jack Hawksworth, those are the two cars that had the penalties.
Yeah, it's the battle to be best placed of those that have had a drive-through here, and it's left Onofre a little bit vulnerable to Jack Hawksworth, but able to fend off the challenge here. This is, again, two cars that came into this race weekend with championship aspirations. Really interesting to see how many have had problems. And remember, Russell Ward, we were lamenting the start that he's had. All of a sudden, he's back to fifth with so many of his competitors that have had drive-through penalties now. Not where he would like to be, having been shuffled back on the start, but he kept his nose clean and now is drawing a bead on Misha Goikberg for fourth.
Coming down to 20 minutes having been completed. Let's take our first VP Racing in-race update. And it is still the two BMWs from Paul Miller Racing. They're half a second apart. Number 1 from number 48, Neil Verhagen from Dan Harper. Giacomo Altoe from pole position now just sitting in third position, another half a second further back. He's got 0.3 of a second on the Corvette of Tonio Garcia. Corvette's now been split. The number 3 car with the 64 Ford Multimatic Mustang GT3 with Sebastian Prio behind the wheel in 5th position. He's got ahead of Nicky Katzberg, who makes up the top 6 in the number 4 Corvette. The rest of the GTD Pro field, AO Racing and the 77 Porsche with Klaus Bachler, another half a second further back. Then Marco Mappelli, 0.8 of a second away from Rexy. That's the Pfaff Motorsport Lamborghini Huracan number 9. 9th position, Aaron Telitz for Vassar Sullivan and their Lexus. He's 4 seconds off the back of Marco Mappelli. And the other GTD Pro runner, 10th position for them, but at the back of the field, having been in through the pit lane to clear the radiators after the off-track excursion on lap 1. Ford Multimatic Motorsports, Fred Vervish in the number 65. In GTD, Manny Franco leads for Conquest Racing in the 34 Ferrari. From Wayne Taylor Racing, Danny 4 Mile in the V10 Lamborghini Huracan. Last season's a racing for that car. DXDT Chevy Corvette in 3rd position for Alec Yadel, the number 36. That's the green and blue Bosch-sponsored car. Misha Goikberg, Fortier Racing, the number 78, in 4th position. Russell Ward has fought his way back from, I think, 9th position up to 5th. The championship leader refusing to give up, and he's only another 0.3 further back, so just on a second and a half away from the leading class. The top 6 in GTD made up by the Heart of Racing's Aston Martin Vantage and Casper Stevenson, who also dropped down the field with Russell Ward. Then it's Brendan O'Reilly for Inception Racing, the number 70 Ferrari. He's the best of the 2 Bronze Cup runners as well. Jensen Altman for Gradient making progress. He's up to 8th position in the 66 Silver Grey Ford Mustang. Adam Adelson in the dark blue Wright Motorsport with the yellow stripe. The 120 is in 9th. Ori Fadani up to 10th position in the Corvette, the black and yellow pinstripe car. Then Onofrio Triazi for Triazi Competition, the 021, and Jack Hawksworth I like what Ryan said, the best of the cars that have had penalties at the moment, 11th, 12th and 13th for Triazzi, Ferrari, Lexus, number 12, and Patrick Gallagher in the Turner Motorsport car with Fred Ravish, as we said, running last. That, with 23 minutes gone, 11 laps completed, and 2 hours and 17 minutes to go, is the first of our VP Racing in race updates.
VP Racing, the official fuel, coolant and additives of IMSA.
So hearing from Aaron, our producer up in Concord, that there may be a problem with the number 12 car and Jack Hawksworth, so we'll keep an eye and an ear on that. Hello to Dave Alcock and Randon WEC Means. Both tuned in, I think, from the UK. Tom, who is logged in from Toronto, and with a multi-screen setup as well. 1, 2, 3, 4 screens there, Tom. Nice to know that you're with us as well. Don't forget, we'd like your thoughts on what you've seen this weekend at VIR, the GT-only event. Michelin post-race tech, exclusively on RS2, once we end the World Feed TV. Ryan Marine and John Hindhoff in the Ford Performance Global Broadcast Centre, and Arjuna, the number 12 Jack Hawksworth Vasser Sullivan RCF, no issue as such, but they have had a warning, and this is something that all the teams have had to get used to this year in IMSA.
Absolutely. With the addition of the torque sensors, John, the failure to control powertrain parameters has become a somewhat frequent refrain, especially at specific tracks where when the cars get onto the curbing, it can spike that torque sensor value and just get that warning inflicted. So quick check with the Vasser Sullivan team. There's no issue for the number 12, but I was quickly just wandering up and down pit lane and trying to get some stories from the team. It does sound as though the leaders aren't showing their full speed right now, and that might not be fuel saving, John, but going back to what you were saying slightly earlier, getting the tires to the end of the fuel stint might be what all the teams are focusing on right now.
Thanks, Arjuna. Just to put some meat on the bones there, BOP is what some people would say the work of the devil. Perhaps it's more correct to say it's a necessary evil if you don't like it. I happen to think that it gives us a great variety of cars, particularly in the GT3 globally. It's called GTD here in IMSA. For a long time, there have been raised eyebrows and questions about how you balance the performance of such fundamentally different looking, sounding, and even cars that have different philosophies of why they came into being in the first place. A BMW M4 GT3 against a Chevrolet Corvette, against a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, an Aston Martin, etc. They wouldn't necessarily be the same bedfellows. And certainly if you just had races with the street cars, there would be great disparity in the potential performances. We've just had the onboard camera on the number 57 of Russell Ward broken by some rubber debris fired up from the car ahead, which is Misha Goldberg. So balance of performance has been refined over the years, and the more data you can have, the better decisions you can make between IMSA and the ACO. They've been working together in the brave new world of togetherness and regulations that have been pulled together for the prototypes and the GT cars. And so from measuring a few years, as we used to do a few years ago, what goes into the engine in terms of fuel and air, once that still happens, the, I think, game-changing addition is actually measuring very, very sensitively indeed what comes out of the engine. And that is done by a field magnetic sensor placed on the drive shafts of the cars. And basically that measures the torque on the drive shaft by carefully measuring the changes in a magnetic field as the drive shaft turns and twists. it's a clever piece of kit. It isn't cheap, but it does mean that everybody's power and torque output is being measured in the same way. And therefore, it does mean you can watch in real time. And that is what IMSA are doing here. So the failure to adhere to the controlled powertrain parameters warning was a spike in the power output of that number 12 Lexus that has been noted by the algorithm and thrown up a warning on the screen at IMSA's technical race control, and then passed on to the team. Now, they try to throw out such things as curb strikes and getting airborne, which happens here. So, a warning given for that one, but if that continues, that will potentially have to be brought into the pits to be fixed, or for them to turn the engine map down, perhaps, to stop them getting too close to it in the future. Clearly, Ryan, every team wants to run as close to that measurement limit as possible, but going over it, and we have seen this happen, can bring penalties.
Yeah, we have. It's been a little while since we've seen it happen, though, with any regularity, because I think the teams have kind of got it dialed in, and it's something that the driver actually can monitor in real time, and so they will see, oh, okay, I used a little more curb, that caused a spike, I need to compensate for it a little bit further down the road. It's made for a very different driving experience, I think, when you talk to some of the folks that have driven these cars when the torque sensors have gone on and had driven them without before. But it does give the organizing body a lot more data to go off of, and really helps to curtail, if not eliminate entirely, some of the sandbagging that we've seen affect BOP in the future, or in the past, rather.
Overtake there by Onofrio Triazzi, the best placed of the penalised cars. He's just gone past Oreo Fidani. So Triazzi ahead of Fidani now, up into 10th in GTD for the 021 Ferrari. Now, as we head towards the half hour, so still just over 2 hours to go, let's take some more insight from down in the pit lane. Here's Arjuna.
Catching up with Philip Ellis in the Windward Racing 57. Philip, what happened on that race start from your perspective?
I mean, from our perspective, the 40 Lexus just never went. We knew that they would play some games. We didn't think that it would be that bad, but, you know, it is what it is.
Are you surprised by the number of drive-through penalties that we've had to kick this race off, or is this kind of what Bo Barfield said to expect if there was plenty of argy-bargy?
No, this was pretty much exactly what he said was coming our way if people didn't learn from the last race. I think last race was a real shame. It was a bad show for everybody, and, you know, there's only one way to fix it.
You and I talked before the race started about GTD Pro versus GTD and the difficulties that you feel like it's sort of brought to the class, especially for those at the front of the GTD field.
Yeah, I mean, first, just every start we are kind of in the bottleneck, so we have some faster GTD cars behind some slower GTD Pro cars, and it just pushes us, or any leader in the class at that point, into our field, and, you know, it opens up the idea of some stupid maneuvers, as we have seen a couple of times this year already. So I'm sure it's exciting for the fans, but it's a fake excitement, unfortunately. I'd rather have, you know, if you're fast enough, you'll be up there. If you're not, you shouldn't be up there.
Thanks, Philip. And interesting, John, to hear the different perspective of GTD drivers about the change in regulation for 2025.
Yes, if I'm going to talk, I'll have to unmute my mic. Yes, absolutely right. So it would seem, Ryan, and that was an interesting comment there by Philip Ellis, that the number 14 Vassar Sullivan Lexus was trying to run interference for their teammates in GTD. They were at the tail end of the GTD Pro field and therefore able to mix it up with the GTD cars on the front row, which of course included their teammate and the car that they are battling against, that 57 AMG.
Yeah, that seemed to be the implication. It's worth noting we haven't heard the Vassar Sullivan side of the story, and so I don't want to go. I haven't seen it either, so really can't add a whole lot to that conversation, except that right at the very beginning, I got a text from Arjuna down in the pits, and he said immediately, right at the start of the race, that one of the Windward crew members went down to have a quick word with the Vassar-Sullivan crew. So, anyway, tempers are hot, as you would expect, even if the temperature here isn't quite as hot as we're accustomed to this time of the year. And ultimately what this comes down to is everyone knows we're running out of time here. Championships are going to be decided in the next 3 races, including this one. Only 2 chances remain after this. So I think that explained a little bit of what we saw at Road America, and inevitably, when you have so many close title fights in GTD, I think there's 4 crews that feel like they're in with a shout. I think there's 3 that feel the same in GTD Pro. When time starts to run out, the sand ticks out of the hourglass, right? You're going to have some tempers flare from time to time.
Yeah, don't disagree with that. We're able to, at this stage of the season, thanks to Aaron up in Concord, give you the GTD points as they run. Here's the Pro points for you. Simpson Garcia are now, as they stand, 3 points to the good in the GTD Pro Championship. Simpson Garcia in the number 3 Chevy Corvette. Albert Costa has had a variety of drivers alongside him or driving with him this season, and therefore he is on his own in second place. 141 points back from the lead is the number 77 crew of Lauren Heinrich and Klaus Bachler. In GTD, it's still Phil Ellis and Russell Ward. Casper Stevenson in second place now on his own for the reasons we mentioned for Albert Costa. So AMG crew 57 from Aston Martin crew 27, or at least Casper. And 169 back from the lead is the number 12 crew of Parker Thompson and Jack Hawksworth. So effectively another 38 points further back. So still tight. Remember, it's big numbers in IMSA, and we'll keep having a look at that throughout this race and the last couple of races of the season. What's happened to Manny Franco? He's dropped away to 5th position, and we've also got the Inception number 70. This is another close encounter of the WeatherTech advertising board kind on the right front of the number 70. Not sure what Brendan can do with that. He flicks to the right to allow the Triazzi Ferrari to go through. I dare say, if you were driving like that normally, you'd get a warning for being somewhat erratic, but it's worked. Well done. Well done. More than a little golf clap here in the Ford Performance Global Broadcast Centre. Excellent stuff. He just clobbered it as he was coming up the hill. That's the second one of those that have been taken out. Meantime, in the pit lane, Aaron Tielitz has come in the number 14 Vassar-Sullivan Lexus. That drops him off the back of the GTD Pro runners. And Arjuna is watching the stop. This seems early to me, although we have... we've had 40 minutes. Actually, it doesn't matter. They don't need 40 minutes. So is this a full service then, Arjuna?
It did look like full service for the 14. However, the 12 Vassar-Sullivan machine, the GTD car, has also pulled in. And John, no driver change for them because they have not hit the 40-minute mark that would allow them to switch over their drivers just yet. Yeah. Bit of a cleaning of the radiator. So I'm wondering if the Vassar-Sullivan 12 has also been off the track in the last handful of laps. But both Lexuses off and away with a decent pit stop on both sides.
Thank you. Now, let's see if we can answer the question about Manny Franco. Ryan, what do you know?
I wish I knew something. I just know that all of a sudden he went from being shown as the leader in GTD to be shown in 5th. It had happened rather suddenly. So Danny Formal now leads. Alec Udell for DXDT. Remember, we were wondering what was wrong with that car in one of the practice sessions earlier in the weekend. They didn't seem to have the pace. They find themselves second. Misha Goikberg up to 3rd, and Russell Ward now shuffled back up to the 4th spot in GTD. But the mystery to me is what happened to Manny on that lap. Now, to cover off what the Vassar Sullivan team is doing here, they are trying to pit here early. They're right on the fringe of the window. They can do it, I think, in one more stop from here. So what they're going to do then is try and get that stop out of the way, and then perhaps a full course yellow could help vault them into better track position later on. Neither were particularly well placed in their classes due to misfortune earlier in this race. And while it's not typical to see a GTD car make the stop so early because of the drive time situation, the thing that they have in their favor is 2 drivers with effectively the same pace in Jack Hawksworth and Parker Thompson. So they can kind of play these games where, especially the Bronze Cup, the lineups with the bronze drivers in it, they really can't play the same games, and Vassar Sullivan trying to use that to their advantage.
We talked now, Porsche Keys to the race and the Michelin Countdown to Green about track position. They're taking the pain now, hoping to get track position later on, or if the Ford Mustang GTD safety car comes out, because they would take a shorter pit stop and cycle to the front. They're back timing from the end of the race as well.
Right.
And 2 hours and 40 minutes is 2 1-hour stint and a 40-minute stint. Or you can break it up, what's that, 60, 60 and 40, so that's 140 minutes. Split that into 3 if you want to. We've seen that done here before, and fractions of standard length runs. The key part of it, I think, Ryan, is you only want to come down the pit lane twice, whichever way you play it. I might be able to throw a little bit of light on Manny Franco in the 34 GTD. I'm hearing a report, and again, many thanks to the eyes and ears that we have round the track from our camera operators who are all talking back to Concord, and Aaron is able to tap into some other information as well. Seems that Manny might have gone off at turn 14 at the top of the hill at the roller coaster a few laps ago. It also looks like the EO Porsche's just been off track as well for Klaus Bachler at the start of the lap. I saw some dust coming up from the back of Rexy. Don't know whether he was wagging his tail rather too much there for Klaus Bachler. Not been their run so far this weekend, despite the changes in BOP. Comes through NASCAR corner, he's fine. Corvette in front, just made a little mistake, dived down the inside from Klaus, and then get a little tap from the Corvette from behind. I think that might have to be looked at. There's some history between these two cars. So it was a clean move into the left hook. There was racing room asked for and given, but on the right-hander, not the case. Now, some carbon fibre's gone up in the air there. I think from the front of the Vette rather than from the back of the Porsche. Race control, have that under review. And again, that, I could see that going either way. I really could. Ian McCarthy, hello Ian, on IMSA Radio about BOP, love it or hate it. We should all be cherishing these years in which racing is largely being monitored and judged by humans. Don't get me started on driverless race cars, he says. That is a good point that you make there. And again, I've just come back to the variety of manufacturers and the number of manufacturers that we've had, and whether it's been me and Ryan talking this season about it in WeatherTech, or Jeremy Shaw and I down through the years, the spread of race wins, fastest laps, laps led, etc. It was at the Oak Tree that Manny Franco went off at turn 11, not turn 14, and that's what cost him those 4 places. All of that would tend to suggest that at some stage during the season, everybody is going to have a crack. At some stage during the longer races, everybody is going to feature. And that surely, competition-wise, has to be a good thing. Ryan is quite a lot younger than me, as is Arjuna. I go back far enough to remember when GT racing looked like a Porsche Cup race, particularly at Le Mans. It was all Porsches. And it was great, and we had great racing, but there was no variety. We don't have that now, and therefore there's more money, more manufacturers, more investment, more things for the fans at the track to see, and more opportunity for people who own the type of cars or aspire to own the type of cars that race to cheer for their favourites. Just one man's opinion there. We're under 2 hours to go. Just over 44 minutes elapsed. Let's take another VP in-race update. Still the 2 Paul Miller BMWs. They are running their own race at the moment in lockstep. 1 from 48. It's formation flying for the Bavarian cars at the front of the field. Significant anniversary for BMW M in the United States, and they're running in those anniversary colours. Giacomo Altoe from pole position, 1.2 seconds back, keeping the Beamers in sight in the Ferrari from Dragon Speed. Then Chevrolet Corvette, Ford Mustang, Chevrolet Corvette, all half a second, 3/4 of a second apart. And the top 8 are all GTD pros, so that's Pfaff and EOL Racing. A little bit more of a gap between those two. But the top 8 cars are now 8.5 seconds apart. GTD has Danny Formal leading for Lamborghini, DXDT and Chevy Corvette in second with Alec Udell. That's the 36 car, green and blue car. DXDT therefore in second, 8/10 ahead of Forte, Lamborghini and Winward back into fourth. And that is your VP in race update with 45 minutes elapsed. And incident responsibility penalty issued. I said it could have gone either way. It's gone the way of Klaus Bachler. And it will be a drive-through for the number 77 car for that contact with Corvette number 4. Here comes the number 77. I suspect this will be the drive-through before the pit stops start. Although, we've had a Corvette driving through as well. But that was the number 3 car, Antonio Garcia, into pit lane, and that, Arjuna, is a scheduled pit stop.
Also in, John, Winward Racing in the 57, and I see the driver change swapping through. So Russell Ward out and Philip Ellison behind them, the heart of racing machine. I can see Wright Motorsports and maybe the Inception Ferrari as well. There was a bit of chatter about if the Corvettes were going to try and short pit. Tommy Milner said it didn't necessarily make much sense to him in that number 4 machine, but the 3 has gone in and out. Looks like a very tidy pit stop, and now I can see Dragon Speed ready to respond. Albert Costa on the wall and ready to jump behind the wheel of the 81.
Well, if it was a short full to get them out, that's about track position. That was our number 1 Porsche key to the race. And Ryan, what we're seeing here at 46 minutes or thereabouts, this is splitting the race into 3 pretty much identical stints.
Yeah, and also now in GTD, we have passed the minimum drive time of 45 minutes, just barely so, but a couple of the cars in the class were eligible to come in and get their drivers out. So Ori Fadani just climbed out of the AWA car, Matt Bell in. But this is why I think we heard a lot of the drivers say it's a pretty straightforward race strategically, at least when you're looking at the fuel mileage side of things. It's a simple 2-stop, but it's looking after those tires and making them last a couple of long stints, especially those that came in on the early side of this window. That's a lot of babying the tire that you're going to have to do, not once but twice. We're talking about 2 stints right around an hour each, and that could be where it gets really tricky.
Here comes the number 81. Giacomo Altoe is getting out of the car. Albert Costa will get back in. This is a fuel and tyre stop. My question will be, is it a full 4 tyre stop? I don't think anybody will risk just the left-hand side, the working side tyres. Down in the pit lane, here's Arjuna.
No 2 tire stops today, John. The word from everyone I talked to. There was some talk about that yesterday in the Pilot Challenge with the 5 lug nut wheels, but here with the 1 lug nut, no such worries. Dragon Speed get beat off pit lane though by the 64. A great stop from Ford Multimatic to get out in front of Dragon Speed.
And that's Mike Rockefeller, who's taken over from Sebastian Priaulx, who did a very solid first stint. Priaulx really settling into his role here after a few years now racing in the States in a variety of championships. Hello to Andy and Joe, who I am absolutely certain will be tuned in wherever in the world they are, possibly on their home island of Guernsey. And let's see if we can have a quick word with Seb Priaulx very quickly, just out of the car.
And he's wiping himself down from all that sweat. Seb, good opening stint?
You know, I did what I could. Just followed the leader sort of thing, you know. Pace seemed okay. Struggling with the rears a little bit, but I made some positions up at the start. One position on the Corvette. That helped me a little bit, but, you know, it's just follow the leader here. So, but yeah, it's a good start.
And strategically, we were just wondering, it's pretty simple, right, in terms of split the race up into equal stints to save the Michelin tyres?
Yeah, you know, I was upshifting early to save the rears. You know, that's really important. I found a different line to help the rear tyres. But it's just a matter of survival out there, and it's difficult to pass. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough race.
Good job. Thank you.
Pride of the Channel Islands, Seb Priaulx. I think fourth generation racer, actually. His great grandfather did some racing. Certainly know his grandfather and, of course, his father, Andy Priaulx. Carrying on the family business in some respects. Really carving out, as I say, a good reputation for himself. At IMSA Radio, if you want to get in touch, Chris Suku, regarding BOP. If applied fairly, it means manufacturers can provide a racing car at the pinnacle of their craft and true to the company's DNA ethos, meaning different solutions from different manufacturers can solve the problem of how to win a race. Eloquently put, Chris. Thank you for that. Neil Verhagen and Nicky Katzberg still lead. They're going deep into this race. 50 minutes since we went to green flag. We've had a tiny sliver of yellow flags behind, of course, yellow rather, behind the Mustang GTD safety car. Just under 5 minutes. 4 minutes and 46 seconds was the neutralisation for that first lap incident that left debris on the circuit. So 27 laps now for the two BMWs at the front of the field. What they're doing, if they can hold on to this and, you know, add Marco Mappelli into that, who's now in third, they are the only three cars, Ryan, who have not yet stopped. And then there's a 24-second gap back to Klaus Bachler as the 0-2-1 into the pit lane for Onofrio Triazzi from the lead of GTD. He's out of the car already. Those top three, though, Ryan, what they're doing is they're going to have two much shorter stints in the second half of the race. And if they've got some new tyres to go on, that's going to make their calculations a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah, that's right, exactly so. And I think Klaus Bachler actually would be in that conversation too. The one pit stop he's shown as having made was really the drive-through penalty, but he's way down the order as a consequence. 31 seconds behind the lead. The risk, though, is with so much of the field having made their stops now at this stage, should a yellow come out, that would really be painful for those that have yet to pit. So they're running that risk, but they're also analyzing the trends, and we've talked about it a lot over the course of the weekend already, haven't we, John? The trends indicate one yellow typically is what we see in these GT-only races here at VIR, and they'll know that. So for them, it's worth being out in clean air, being able to do some quick laps, and then try and also get the reward of having shorter stints, the final two stints, where others might be laboring on older tires.
Exactly so. I also think that there's an element of fuel saving going on, not because they are tight on fuel. I'm just looking at the laps. The best lap we've had was from Fred Verveet with a 46.8. At the moment, it's high 47s and low 48s for the top cars at the front of the field. The lap record here for GT3 is a 44.150. So we are not bothering that at the moment. Alexander Sims, in fact, has just come down to a 46.737. And also in the 46 is Mike Rockenfeller at the start of his stint on new Michelin tyres in the Ford number 64, just vacated by Seb Priaulx. Hello to Ray Lethern from South Africa, from the Cape Town, out in a very lovely 911 GT3 RS. That time on a Sunday, GT racing at VIR. Big shout out to his partner in racing and wife, the amazing Auto Princess. Thanks for the brilliant free-to-air coverage, Ray. It is our pleasure. Possibly not a Porsche day today, I'm afraid. Although Klaus Bachler, once again, by virtue of the early pit stop ride, is up into 4th position, albeit a minute and 17 seconds away from the lead. They're having to do this a different way. And I don't mind that either, if I'm honest, because I don't just want to see everybody coming in after a certain number of laps. We've only had that very short bit of yellow flag, and so right now there are still a couple of different strategic and tactical mindsets out there.
Yeah, now remind me though, that again, that was a drive-through, right? That wasn't a pit stop for Bachler, correct?
No, you're right. Of course, he hit the Corvette. Yep.
Yeah.
So he hasn't had a fuel stop yet.
Right. Yeah, that's what we're looking at for, I think the top 4 all owe a pit stop at this stage.
Correct.
But I think we got a glimpse a moment ago about what new tires can do. Matt Bell, who is last at the moment, just having got into that car that was started by Ori Fidani, if I'm not mistaken, was just hassling the leader of the race, Neil Verhagen, who is out on the old tires, whereas Bell has just gotten in and is doing some really quick laps in that Corvette. And
he's trying to get the
lap
lap
seeing
back.
A pretty significant drop-off. Yeah, exactly right. And it was illustrative, I think, of just how much the pace does fall off toward the end of these runs.
But this is what we heard, didn't we, from the drivers in Michelin Countdown, agreeing with Arjuna. You might just have to live with it in the last 10 or 15 minutes. And here comes the first of the BMWs to the lane, and it is the leader, Neil Verhagen. His teammate came in last time around. It will be a full service, and Arjuna Kankapati is watching this one. Max Hesse is in and out last time around. Here's the leader, Arjuna.
A very smart call from Paul Miller Racing, in my mind, to split the strategy here, John, with the cars running 1 and 2 through the opening 40 minutes of the race. You don't need to put them in together when they have the pit stalls right next to each other. So this allows a bit of separation, and as the front right tire goes on, it's the final bit of Michelin rubber that needs to be put on. The fuel is now the one that is being weighted on. I do believe this will be a slightly short fill though, so as they just wait, counting the fuel rolling into that BMW M4 GT3 Evo, this is a bit longer than I was anticipating. Off and away they go. Now where are their sister car? Flying past the start-finish straight, and they're going to slide down the order on the strategy.
Here's something as well. Alexander Sims, Tommy Milner now aboard the number 4 Corvette, and they have mirrored the strategy and dropped out right behind what is now Madison Snow in the Paul Miller Racing number 1 car. Now that's interesting to me, because that is obviously, they were further back down the road. They knew when that number 1 car was coming in, and there's no way they put the same amount of fuel in as that BMW, because they were several seconds down on Neil Verhagen when he came in, and they were right on the tail of Madison Snow when they went out. So this is Corvette playing the track position game here with this number 4 car, with Alexander Sims having stopped earlier on in the number 3. Tricky stuff from Pratt Miller kind of expect that, Ryan, don't we?
Oh, yeah, that's Corvette racing. I mean, how many race wins did they think their way to rather than purely race their way to over the years? They've got that reputation of being able to outsmart the opposition even when the outright pace might not be in their corner. And no matter what happens, this has been a remarkable weekend for the Four side of that garage, because they had to do that engine change yesterday just before qualifying, got it buttoned up in the nick of time, and it's been amazing to see. It shouldn't surprise us after all these years, but it's still remarkable what the Corvette racing crew can do when it's necessary.
So that was 28, 29, 30 laps for the number 1 BMW. Marco Mappelli is still out there in the remarkably fuel-efficient V10 Lamborghini Huracan. Has not yet made his stop. And let's see where he is on the circuit. Just coming around Oak Tree now in elegant isolation. Onto the back straight. The car in front of him is Matt Bell, who is now back on the lead lap after those BMW stops. Kenton Cook just put in the fastest lap for the 021 Triazzi Ferrari, a 1:46.5. The leader lapping in a 48.8. So over 2 seconds between the leader and the cars who have just changed tyres. So you can't afford to have too many laps on that, because the increased performance from those new Michelin tyres is costing you 2+ seconds a lap. Let's go down to Corvette. Antonio Garcia out of the car talking to Arjuna Kankapati.
Pratt and Miller have an incredible record here, but so does Antonio Garcia with 4 wins and 9 podiums through the years. How was that first stint?
Yeah, I can complain about it. All very tight. Everybody kind of similar pace. I could see there is a lot of tire deck, so I could see that from the Ferrari. So in a way, I was just trying to keep some pushing him a little bit, just trying to go fast just trying to him to burn some tires, and it definitely paid out. And probably the undercut works pretty well. I was saving quite a bit of fuel, and that's what it got us to the front now, I think. So I think we are probably on one of the strategies. The other cars are running way deeper, but so far we have a pretty good lead. So I don't know what would be the fuel advantages towards the end for the other cars running longer. So everything according to plan so far.
Was the short field then planned from the start of the race, or was that something you adapted to based on what you were seeing with the speed of the others?
No, it's not short field. It's just we just stopped before the rest, and I was saving quite a bit of fuel there. So yeah, I think we just had to play smart, and I think so far it's playing out.
How do you compare the grip this year to all the races that you've done here over the years?
I mean, it's tight. Although yesterday we were a little bit far off in qualifying, we showed that maybe in race pace we are a little bit better than we were yesterday. So thankfully the car we were testing during practice 1 and 2, which looked promising, is still doing so. So yeah, we just to carry on, not do any mistake, and let's see what the race brings.
We'll see indeed.
So 2 completely different strategies, Ryan Marine, for the 2 Corvettes. An early stop and the undercut, as described there by Antonio Garcia. Undercut being the term that is used for coming in earlier than your competition and thereby having a grip advantage, a performance advantage with new tyres, making the most of that so that by the time they come in, you've made time on them. They're doing it the other way with the number 4 car. They've stayed out and shadowed Madison Snow, and they're still only 1.8 seconds behind, and they were way further back than that before they came in. So this is interesting from Pratt Miller. And here's the leader.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think you're right with the 4 car. I think they must have short-filled on that side of the garage. The 3, I think the undercut is quite strong here. Again, the pace delta, it's about a second and a half, or even more in some instances from the beginning of the stint to the end. So undercut should be pretty strong, but you give it back on the back end of the stint. That's the risk that you take coming in early.
And just to understand that then, Andrea Caldarelli has just taken over the FAF Motorsports Lamborghini. He spent 1 minute and 5 seconds on the pit lane. So that was the car that was out front. And they've dropped way down to 11th position. Part of that is down to how close everybody still is. In fairness, a minute covers all bar Matt Bell. So 22 cars are within a minute. And it's a 1 minute 47 lap at the moment. In fact, probably 1 minute 48 for most people at the moment. So everybody now has done at least one pass through the pit lane for a pit stop, apart from Klaus Bachler, who has only done his drive-through. So what they're doing now, and how often have you heard me say this, Porsche with great fuel mileage. He now comes into the pit lane for his first stop. Arjuna, finally, after 34 laps and 1 hour and 4 minutes, Klaus Bachler brings Rexy into the pit lane.
And this was something, John, that was somewhat expected. Talking to the AO Racing crew, they weren't sure that they had the outright speed to be able to grab the victory. And now even more on the back foot, given that drive-through penalty that they've had to serve. They haven't had the luxury of a caution to bring them back into the thick of things, but it's going to be sticker Michelin tires. And my assumption would be, pack that car in with the fuel and see how long you can get in this next into the race, and hope the safety car comes out and saves the potential race here for AO Racing.
105 minutes on the clock, Ryan. That's, effectively 2 52-minute stints now for the number 77, and that's with the disadvantage of having an extra drive through the pit lane. That was another 1 minute and 5 a pit stop time. So they must be spot on. Another warning for powertrain parameters, this time to Albert Costa in the Dragon Speed Ferrari. So see the explanation from earlier on. Now this is what I love, Ryan Marine, because this is a 21st century old school endurance race, albeit distilled down, boiled down to its absolute constituent parts. We have 2 or 3 different ways of getting to the end of this 2 hour 40-minute race, and they will only converge once everyone has made their final pit stop. So in athletic terms, this is a bit like the 4x400 metres relay, and we haven't got to that 600 metre point. The stagger has not yet unwound.
It's a great analogy, actually. You're right, and I don't know that we'll have the full picture until we get to maybe that final stint. Even the final 30 minutes will give us a better sense for who made the right call, whose gamble paid off, and who came up on the wrong side of a gamble. One car I've been watching slowly but surely recover from some issues early in the race is the 021. That's the Triarci car. They had the drive-through penalty, and they've been kind of making their way forward. Kenton Cook's in that car now. They've been really fast, but they were on the early side of that pit window, so maybe now paying a bit of the price relative to those on fresher tires. But if they could get a yellow to bunch them back up, I think that would be a car that you can't rule out for a decent recovery. And in fact, as we say that, Kenton Cook on the attack just made his way by Robert McGuinness down into Horseshoe. The other car that's recovered beautifully is Windward Racing's Philip Ellis. Yes. They are second again, John. That's where they qualified, but they haven't spent much time there in second place. They were down as far as, I think, 7th after the opening lap when that first and only yellow came out. And now, through some misfortune for others and good pace in that car for both drivers, they find themselves back in second place and only 1.8 seconds out of the class lead.
Let's have a quick word with Robert McGuinness's teammate, Jensen Altsman, about to, just been announced that he's going to race some GT4s down in Australia and take his first visit down under. He's with Arjuna Kangapati down in the pit lane.
Part of the Ford Performance Junior team is Jensen Altsman. And Jensen, are you prepared to head down under and deal with downforce in reverse?
Definitely prepared. Just hoping I get enough sleep on that plane ride over. I'm not going to have a lot of time to acclimate, but for sure looking forward to
How was that first stint? This is your final race of the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship this year, at least, as part of the sprint lineup for Gradient's number 66.
Yeah, I'm glad you added the this year part, right? We're working hard to make something happen for next year. It's been great. It's kind of been a bummer. None of us have wanted to talk about it, but I won't be back in the driving capacity, neither will Robert with this crew, but we'll be hanging out in Indy and Petit for sure, hanging out with these guys. Yeah, the track got pretty warm pretty quick. I think you probably saw a lot of drivers having high tire temps really quickly. We had to adjust to the balance, but once kind of both the front and rear tires burned off, it was just really slick, but the balance was actually not terrible.
And we were just looking at the tires, and I was saying they looked quite chewed up, and you were saying they actually look like they've got some life left, but you didn't feel like that.
Yeah, they for sure look like they've got some decent life left. Like, I would have bet money that those tires did not come off the car, but I think it's just super, super greasy at the moment. Thanks. Yeah.
Great analysis from all these drivers. Remember, they've not long been out of the race car, and they make themselves available to us and to our NBC Sports colleagues in the pit lane, and give us such eloquent answers to sometimes quite technical questions, sometimes slightly jokey questions, and sometimes they are talking to us when they've just been on the wrong end of something and probably don't want to talk to anybody. Hats off to them. We have got some absolute stars up and down the pit lane, and also to the teams for the access as well. Bit of a battle going on in the battle for third position. There's a couple of things I want to make a point of here, Ryan. Fred Vervish is leading the motor race now by 2.6 seconds from the Corvette of Alexander Sims. Now, cast your mind back, dear viewer and listener, to why Fred Vervish was in the pit lane after only a couple of laps. Remember, he was pushed off the track and had to have his radiator grills wiped out of grass, and they topped off the car at that point, left on the starting Michelins, but topped off the VP Racing fuel. So he's now been running 37 laps from the beginning of the race, albeit with that one stop. As soon as he could get in after the yellow was cleared. His teammate is 10 seconds back in third, and that's now Mike Rockenfeller. So those are two somewhat different strategies, with Ford Multimatic number 65 Mustang GT3 running its 33rd lap at the moment, and Rockenfeller on his 11th out of the pits. Now, we know that a full pit stop's about a minute, so that's not a real look at where Fred Vervish is. Or is it? Because with only 90 minutes left to go, we are now getting into the area where quite easily he can do it on one more pit stop. And he's got two much shorter stints to come at the end of the race. And that is good news for him in terms of tyre life. Perhaps they won't put as much fuel in, the car will be lighter, or his last stint will be very short, and his last fill will be very short indeed. So, still things to watch here, and the nuances of what's going on, absolutely fantastic. I'm loving this, and that's what I said about it being an old school 21st century race. Because what we're waiting for now is for all those strategies to play out and to see whose calculations, whose spreadsheets, or more likely, whose gut feeling, Ryan Marine, on the pit wall was the one that was most correct.
Right. It's a bit like a juggler with a lot of balls in the air, and we got to see what the order is when they finally come down, and he catches all of them. So for Vervish, for the 65, the trouble they had is because of that call to the pit lane, the off-track moment. They lost track position. They were quite a bit behind the leader. So the only way I think this works for them is with a safety car intervention before Correct. The end of this race. The other trouble that they're having is, yeah, they are pushing pretty deep in this stint, but consequently there's not much left in those tires. They're losing half a second a lap to the chunk of cars behind them, and it's even more. It's up over a second to Madison Snow, who pitted fairly recently, and those that have pitted recently are running 46s or low 47s, whereas he's running in the high 48s. To give you some idea, it's actually a 2-second delta between the two. So the longer this goes, the more he's going to lose relative to those that have pitted recently once the pit stop cycle shuffles through. But again, presumably the tire situation will be on the other foot as Vervish pits now a little bit further down the line. And if a yellow should come at the right time, they could be well positioned to take advantage of it.
Yeah, Vervish then hands the lead over to Corvette and Alexander Sims with the split strategy from Corvette Racing by Pratt Miller. The number 3 car now leads from Mike Rockenfeller in second. 7.5 seconds between the number 3 and 64. Albert Costa for Dragon Speed. The Ferrari's been quick all weekend and was having a little nibble around the back of Mike Rockenfeller's Ford Mustang GT3 a lap or so ago. Settled into a half a second deficit, 0.2 ahead of the first of the BMWs, and it's the number 48 Paul Miller Racing car. Now that is down to the fact that that car pitted earlier than its teammate. Max Hesse took over the number 48 just a lap. Check that, 4 laps before Madison Snow did, and got the benefit of the new Michelin tyres. He will pay the penalty for that 4 laps earlier than Madison will in terms of how that performance eases to the end. Now, the good thing about Michelin tyres is, as we know, they are very consistent. They give good pace throughout the stint. You can't stop tyres wearing. If you stop tyres wearing, they're so hard that you don't give any grip. And the clever people at Michelin have to get that balance right with these tyres for the GT field. They're all running exactly the same compound and construction. But the tyre drop-off is gradual rather than, and you'll hear people saying, the tyres fell off a cliff. It doesn't mean that somebody threw them into the sea because they were sick of them. It just means that the performance, if it was a straight line at the start of the race, begins to drop down and then drops down vertically and you start losing time. Michelins don't do that. They come down on a fairly predictable curve, and that's what everybody in the pits have had to be thinking about. That's what your engineer is thinking about in consultation with your team's Michelin tyre engineer. They are working the numbers, working out is it a tenth a lap, is it half a tenth a lap, and after 15 laps, does that become 0.2 a lap? And here's a battle on the track for those positions we've just been talking about. Max Hesse and Albert Costa. 2 BMWs ganging up now on the Ferrari. The Ferrari was at the back of Rockenfeller's GT3 Mustang a moment or two ago. Now Rockenfeller up the road to the tune of a couple of seconds. And that's because we've got a fight on our hands for what is effectively 3rd, 4th and 5th. And that all started at the left hook when those cars were close together. A lot of dust being thrown up. But as soon as you start getting sideways and side by side, neither of the cars are on the optimum racing line. And Mike Rockenfeller will be laughing about that. He's pulled out more than a second in less than half a lap, Ryan.
And it is, as you say, all because the cars behind him were squabbling. It looked to me like Costa maybe used up a little too much curb. It kicked him out wide. Did that open the door, at least temporarily, for Hesse to take a peek to the inside? And the two had to both compromise their exit there, leading to a long full throttle section up through Snake and into the climbing S's, where they both lost momentum and dropped back considerably off of Rockenfeller. They've gathered it back up now, and I do think there's more pace in the Ferrari and in the BMWs than is in the Mustang, at least at this stage in the stint, but they've got some work to do to try and reel him back in. It's now close to 2 seconds that they've lost relative to that Ford that runs in second.
And that's in the lap to here, exactly where that all started last time around. That's in 3.5 miles, 2 seconds has disappeared. But now, as Costa can get a little bit of breathing space on his own, he can get back on the optimum racing line, not have to defend, and therefore will close that gap down. So let's have a quick VP in-race update. Corvette leading by 8 seconds. Alexander Sims over Mike Rockenfeller in the Ford Multimatic Mustang. It's a great run for them so far. They've got 2 seconds on the battle for third, which is Dragon Speed's Ferrari with Albert Costa, the 81 car, and then the 48 and 1 Paul Miller BMWs. Tommy Milner in 6th, top 6 on the racetrack, and on the timing screen are GTD pros. The GTD field, Mario Farnbacher for Forte Racing by just half a second from a recovering Winward Racing. That's been a great drive back by the 57 crew. And in fact, they're absolutely together coming to the top of the roller coaster. Then Tom Gamble for Harter Racing. Another good drive back through the field for the number 27 team, who found themselves down towards the bottom of the top 10. And Daniel Surra in 4th for Conquest Racing in GTD. That is your VP Racing update. 1 hour and 21 minutes remaining. Let's have a look at the updated GTD points, GTD Pro points. It's an increased margin of advantage for the number 3 Corvette. Now 73 points to the good over Albert Costa in the 81 Dragon Speed Ferrari. That's courtesy of Mike Rockenfeller being between them. Rockenfeller now 193 points away from the top of the, with Sebastian Priaulx I should say, from the top of the standings. As they run in GTD, well, still a bit of a gap between Russell Ward and Phil Ellis, with Casper Stevenson right in behind them. Casper Stevenson's car's right in behind them. It's 141 points between the top 2 in GTD points for the Drivers' Championship, and the number 12, the Parker Thompson and Jack Hawksworth car, which is sitting at the moment in 8th position in the class after their penalty earlier on. Those guys, sorry, no, it wasn't that car that got the penalty, it was the pro car. Those guys are 199 points off the lead. That's the GTD points and the GTD Pro points as they stand now, thanks to Aaron back in the main control room up at Concord. So as we are pretty much exactly now halfway through the race, we've given you how it stands, we've given you the points. Time for the Pelotti mid-race recap. 43 laps under the Michelin tyres for the leaders. Alexander Sims leading, just 1 lap of caution, and all 23 cars are still running. Some not without problems, some not without penalty. But there's only 43 seconds between 1st and 23rd on the grid. And that's your Pelotti mid-race recap here at the Michelin GT Challenge at VIR. Hour and 20 gone. And an hour and 20 to go at IMSA Radio. If you want to get in touch. First half of the race then, Ryan Marine, your thoughts?
Really excited to see how these strategies play out. I'm right with you. This has the feeling of something where we're not going to know until we get down to the nitty-gritty just who's in the right spot. But I have to say, I've been super impressed by the recovery from Winward after getting shuffled back on the start. We heard from Philip Ellis, didn't we? He was none too pleased with the way he perceived team tactics played out from some of the other teams at the start of the race today. But despite getting shuffled back, they've really settled in nicely and have charged back to second. And Tom Gamble, they're keeping him honest. But a few of the other major championship contenders, John, have had their struggles today. And actually, as they run, both championships would see the gaps open up, leaving VIR if they were to finish in this order. But I suspect they will not, with so much still up in the air strategy-wise in the remaining half of the race we still have to go.
Robbie Foley in and out the pits for Turner Motorsport. That was an exceptionally quick pit stop, 48 seconds. Now, he didn't have a penalty, but with an hour and 18 of the race remaining, that can't have been his last pit stop either. So I wonder if they've had a puncture or some other ailments. That's something for Arjuna. That's the number 96 Arjuna. If you can have a stride down to there, if you don't mind, and see what's going on. in the meantime, another car who may be looking in good shape for our BDO Nose Strategy Award, lost positions at the start of the race. That is the number 27 Aston Martin Heart of Racing Vantage. Casper Stevenson started the race. Be interested to hear what happened at the start there. Arjun is with him now.
How was that recovery drive, Casper, back up into what is now third position for the Heart of Racing number 27?
Yeah, it was, the start was really messy. We were on the outside row got such a bad run, and then it was got hit and lost a few positions and managed to make a few back up, and then the crew did an amazing job in the pit stop, and we made a few up there, and then Tom made a few up on track, and now we're in a good place.
It's 120 odd points that split up the championship right now. How much is that going through your mind?
Yeah, I think that if we finish on the podium where we are, it's good for the championship. Obviously the Winwood car is ahead of us, but we'd still be in the fight.
How do you put Road America behind you with what was, I'm sure, a slightly disappointing result for you and the team?
Yeah, it was a big shame given how good the race was going, but that happens, especially in IMSA. So.
Thanks. And John, for those of you that want, those of the people watching that want to race in this Aston Martin, well, they can do virtually. It will be joining iRacing in September in just a couple of weeks' time.
Thanks, Arjuna. Down in the pit lane. Chris at Bella Corvette asking, is there any timing and scoring I can look at that shows when the last pit stop was for each car? If you go on the live timing, altamlsystems.com/IMSA and select the race timing, all of those columns do several things. So right at the far right of that is the pit stop side of things, which can be cycled through to how many pit stops they've had, how many track limits infractions, the total pit stop time, the last pit stop time, and the time passed since the last pit stop. So you can cycle through all of that in that final right-hand side column. Hopefully that helps you, Chris, there at IMSA Radio, if you want to know. Alan Prosser, by the way, reckons that Arjuna's got a button on his bike in a sort of Batman style that emits a cloud of truth gas when he presses it and pushes it next to the drivers. There might be something in that. We need to find out what that is. Eau de Truth. Some kind of special perfume mix. Hour and 14 to go then. Saw a little bit of overtaking going on a moment or two ago with Andrea Caldarelli getting past Ben Barnicat. That's for 7th and 8th in GTD Pro and 11th and 12th overall. Farnbach is still leading for Lamborghini, but by just 0.3 of a second. Then Tom Gamble in third, Daniel Surratt in fourth in GTD, and Daniel Surratt with the fastest lap of the race, or that Conquest Racing car. I think that was Daniel's lap. 1:46.546 against the best of the GTD pros, the leading Corvette, at 1:46.737. So just underlining there that the performance performance potential of these cars is the same between the classes. It is the carbon-based light form at the end of the wheel, and it's the tactics and the setup that makes the difference. And still, if I look down my strategy screen, and let me just reset that, and just tell you laps since last pit stop, as Chris was asking that, from the top then, 22 laps for the number 3 Corvette that leads, 21 for Ford Multimatic in second, 21 for Dragon Speed in third, 20 for Paul Miller in fourth, 16 for Paul Miller in fifth, 16 for Tommy Milner in sixth. Remember, Corvette covered off that number 1 BMW pit stop. In GTD, it's a little bit more cut and dried. The top 4, 22, 23, 22, 21. So those are a little closer. But there are outliers, particularly those cars in 5th and 6th in GTD here at the moment on 16 laps whereas the cars that they are behind are anything between 4, 5 and 6 laps further into their fuel and tyre run. The car that's really out of kilter, actually, there are 2. Let me check the number 77. Laurent Heinrich is only on 12 laps since he came out of the pits, but he's down in 19th and 58 seconds away from the lead. And Chris Meese in the 65 Ford is also well down the timing and scoring, but he's only 7 laps into his stint, so he's got 2 very short laps, as we've just seen a Lamborghini door mirror go flying off down at turn number 4. Let's head to the pit lane where we've got Lexus pit stops, and Jack Hawksworth comes in from towards the end of the field. This is the car battling for GTD Championship honours. Arjuna.
I'm wandering my way over there as quickly as I can, John. I was actually just checking in with DXDT, who had a great start to the race, but dropped back because of a wheel gun issue in their pit stop. So frustrating for them as the number 12 gets its full service, and off and away it goes. Looks like Sticko Michelin tires as you'd expect. But 71 minutes, John, that is right on the edge of what you'd expect to be able to do without any safety cars potentially helping you out. Driver change has gone through, and Jack Hawksworth is sitting down and taking a breather.
Yeah, I don't think, Ryan, they can get there from that. I change what I say. I think that was a Ferrari mirror. Very expensive Ferrari door mirror at turn 1. So if it's green, that would mean it's from the Conquest Racing car. And Daniel Serra. Surely you can't do 71 minutes here. And even if you can, you're going to have so little grip, Ryan, at the end that you wouldn't be able to defend anybody.
Right. Now, remember, this is the car that had the drive-through penalty earlier.
Yes.
And because I also thought it was the Pro car, but it turned out it was this car that got the drive-through. So they were out of position. They were in a bad way. So they kind of gambled, and right on the very fringe of the first pit stop window, actually, I think they brought both of their cars in. So it might not be too much longer until we see the sister car come into the pits here too. But so they're kind of locked into this, where it was always going to be a bit of a gamble, but they had lost the track position. We've heard from the drivers all weekend, it's hard to get it back on track if you lose it. So this was their play to try and get some kind of a result and keep them in the championship hunt. But we saw the points as they run, didn't we, earlier? And they had lost second place in the points to Casper Stevenson because of how they're struggling here. And to complicate matters, Philip Ellis is having a pretty good day. That's the driver that they're chasing, along with Russell Ward in the points.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. Tim Gray, our exec producer up in London, is saying, surely this race won't stay green for 71 minutes now. Well, it has since that one lap of green. That was 17 minutes past the previous hour. We're now at 41, call it 42 minutes past the next hour. So that's an hour and 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. So 80 minutes plus at the moment that we've been green. We've got 77 minutes to go, 78 minutes to go. Sorry, 68 minutes to go. Wow. So, it's possible. With a field of 23 cars, spread out reasonably well at the moment as well. There's a couple of little gaggles of cars, including this intriguing battle. I'm not sure how much of a battle it is right now for second, third and fourth between Mike Rockenfeller and Albert Costa and Madison Snow. There's no really intent moves going between those two. There were a few laps ago, but now it's settled down again. Meantime, we've got the other Vassar Sullivan RCF GT, which is the car with the red numbers, which means Ben Barnicat is in the pit lane, and looks like he stayed in the car. Arjuna, that was full service, I presume, as well, with some Michelin tyres as Fred Scharndorf comes out of the pit lane for Inception. 68 minutes, still going to be tight for those guys. I just don't see it, Ryan. I think that's too early.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it was a gamble, but it's a gamble two ways. I'm reminded by Anthony Florio on X that when they came in, not only was it right on the fringe where they were probably gambling that maybe they could catch a safety car to help make this window work, but also that was roughly around the time that Brendan Uribe had that WeatherTech signage on the front of his car, and I think they probably were thinking, hey, maybe we'll go full course yellow here, and they could catch the rest of the field napping. So thanks to Anthony for the reminder about that. That's part of the reason that they found themselves boxed into this strategy. But again, I think it was a risk worth taking for them because they didn't have the track position anyway at that stage. I'd also like to point out real quick, John, if I could, I think on maybe 2 laps ago, Max Hesse might have had a problem, and actually right on cue, it slows on track again. They had run a slow lap a few laps ago, and Tommy Milner had gotten by, and I didn't know if they were off track or if there was something technically amiss, but the car had stopped again, or at least slowed again a moment ago. Now it seems like it's starting to slowly get back up to pace, but John, not all is right with the 48.
That is incredibly bad luck for that number 48 car. Has dropped 15, 16 seconds and only now getting up to the top of the oak tree. Trying to listen into the engine, see if we can hear anything. Fortunately not getting the feed from the onboard of that car to hear the engine. It's not pulling the revs though, I don't think, Ryan. And, well, what do they do? Hope it clears and leave him out, or do they bring him into the pit lane with 65 minutes to go? Let's just wait to see what is going on. Coming in, and they'll go to another lap. But he's being passed by another car. The Faf Lamborghini goes through Andrea Caldarelli, and that car is not in any way in tip-top, full healthy condition, Ryan Marine.
No, I mean, I'll defer to you with anything mechanical, John, but I think even my ears pick up something doesn't sound quite right with that car, and then clearly passed like it was standing still almost by the Lamborghini of Andrea Caldarelli. So, yeah, seems like something has happened, and again, it's been a recurring thing now because it's been a few laps that we've seen something crop up, which I think should have Paul Miller and that team a little bit worried.
Yeah, 202 when it should be doing 47s and 48s. So, as I said, 10, 15 seconds. Reporting no power, says Arjuna. What do you do? Do you stop it? I think, right, do you do the full three-fingered salute and do the Control-Alt-Delete? Do you bring it down pit lane to do that? Maybe top it off with fuel at the same time. Meantime, we have got a battle, and Phil Ellis decides that now is the time to step up the pace. It's been a bit full of my leader in all of the classes, but he's putting pressure now on Mario Farnbacher at the front of GTD. This is the overall 6th and 7th, by the way, and leader in the championship in second place at the moment, the light blue and dark blue Forte Lamborghini, looking an absolute picture. The front lighting signature on the Lamborghini Huracan Evos always makes them look like they're sort of squinting menacingly at you and saying, come on, have a go if you think you're hard enough. Which kind of fits with the car's character, doesn't it? AMG sitting in behind now, and Phil Ellis decides to go. He can turn a lot tighter. He may have more grip here. He comes to the left hook. Can he dive down the inside? No. Stays back behind. I wonder if this is... I mean, both of those cars have been out. In fact, I think the Winward car has been out one lap longer than the Forte Lamborghini. Yes, it has. So, they're getting down towards an easy last stop right now. Jade Stolar has got the full onboard from Max Hesse and says some kind of engine problem, maybe a turbo, but it sounds really rather sick. You can go to IMSA.com and IMSA.tv, and whether you're in the US or farther afield, there are some onboards that you can get onto there and on the IMSA YouTube page. Fred Schandorf comes in for what will probably be the last stop for the Ferrari of Inception racing with 62 minutes to go. I'd like to get under 60 minutes here. I really don't want to put the Michelins through a full hour of racing. Little flash of the left-hand indicator from the number 120 LX skier, that latest car to go past Max Hesse, who's just got no pace at all in a straight line. Let's go down to the pit lane and to Arjuna.
We spoke to Seb Prio slightly earlier, John. He is getting back into the 64 Ford Multimatic machine as Mike Rockenfeller climbs out. This is an interesting call to do 2 driver changes, but clearly they feel Seb is the right man to push to the end. Stick of Michelin tires and filling that car up with fuel. I agree with the both of you. I'd want to be on the other side of 60 minutes to feel a little bit more comfortable, especially not feeling the vibe that a safety car is going to come out, and they are going to pack it full of the fuel. Now just counting down and waiting to release the car. Windward Racing are doing the same thing as well, topping off the car and letting, I think, Phil Ellis go all the way to the very end. Ford rumbles off, and let's see if they're going to be able to now stretch the fuel out to the checkered flag.
Maybe, just maybe, Max Hesse did a rolling Control-Alt-Delete a lap or so ago. His last lap, a 52, so a little bit better, but still 4 seconds off the cars around him. Meantime, the number 57 of Phil Ellis has made its last pit stop in that battle at the front of GTD. Again,
I think that was really smart, John, to undercut here, because they were stuck, I think, behind Farnbacher. And also remember, they're thinking championship. So Ellis probably doesn't want to put the car at risk. So their best play to safely try and get to the lead is to do the undercut, which I think could be awfully strong. The other reason I think you might want to pit here, even if it is earlier than some might like in terms of the window, is that 48 looks like has the look of a car that could stop any time, and that could potentially bring out a yellow. So you're covering for that here too.
Overall race leader is in. In fact, both Corvettes are in the pit lane. Here's Arjuna, and there is a fire. There is a fire on the right front of the number 48. Spot on from Ryan Marine. We have a full course caution with 1 out to go. Arjuna, you've got these guys in the pit lane. They've timed it perfectly.
And it's going to be a race between the Corvette and Dragon Speed. The 3's off and away. The championship leader might grab its first victory of the year, and now just waiting for that fuel to finish off in the Dragon Speed machine. But the 4 Corvette has beat them out by a couple of seconds, and so as we slow down the pace of the race, I'm expecting a very busy pit lane, John, as the rest of the cars that weren't able to get in before the caution flew come back down. I see the Forte Lamborghini off and away. Heart of Racing as well. They seem to be able to have finished their full service without needing to run through pit lane and not stop in their box.
There is a trackside marshal with a handheld fire extinguisher. He's not wearing any fireproofs, and he was about to open the bonnet there. He's being waved away by the AMR safety crew, quite rightly. That looks like it's been overfueled, or no, it's gone. There is an exhaust outlet to the just to the rear of the front wheels on there, but I don't think that's it. That looks like something has given way on the number 48 of Max Hesse. He's pulled it off the track at the bottom of turn 17, the hog pen, and we've got the safety team there. Well done to them for waving away the first person on the scene. And the fire is out already. Right, I'm going to do a quick VP Racing update because this could all change. But as it stands right now, the GTD Pro leader is Madison Snow for Paul Miller Racing. Second is the GTD leader, Daniel Surra. Now, we'll split the classes again when we go back, before we go back to green. So Conquest leads in GTD. Second in GTD Pro, Andrea Caldarelli is third overall for Faf and the Lamborghini. These have only done one stop. They have their last stop still to go. See above comment for Elliot Skier. Second in GTD for Wright Motorsports. For Trent Hinman. For Wayne Taylor Racing in the Lamborghini Huracan number 45. Lauren Heinrich has been down the pit lane twice, but only one of those was a pit lane. They're third in the Porsche at the moment, the number 77 in GTD Pro, sixth overall. Fourth for Robert Wickens, DXDT Chevrolet Corvette, who've gradually been crawling up the timing screen there, and that Bosch sponsored, but again they owe us their final pit stop. I reckon, now, which was the Corvette that was penalised? Was it the 4 or the 3, Ryan? It was the 4. Thank you, Aaron.
4, yeah.
Yeah, it was the 4. Thank you. So Alexander Sims has done 2 proper pit stops. So as it stands right now, if he's got enough VP Racing fuel to get him to the end, and Sims was last in the pits
just now,
just recently, just before this yellow.
Yeah, he got in right before the yellow, exactly.
Yeah, totally. So they're good. I think he's the first car then, when we get this cleared up, to be able to go to the end. This yellow is certainly helping for anybody who took the undercut option and hoped they'd get to the end of the race. Who else has done 2 stops? Behind Alexander Sims, it's AWA, Porsche, Matt Bell, no, he's got a stop. Chris Meese in the 65 Ford Multimatic Motorsport. Well, he's done 2 stops, but the second one wasn't his last one. He's still got to do his last. Tommy Milner in the Corvette's been down the pit lane twice, but again, he had a drive-through. Albert Costa in the Dragon Speed number 81 has done 2 times down the pit lane, and so has Sebastian Priaulx back in the car after taking it back from Mike Rockenfeller. So that Ford is going to be in pretty good shape as well. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. It was going to be interesting, Ryan, whatever happened, if we had to go to the end. And that is our VP in-race update with 55 minutes to go.
VP Racing, the official fuel, coolant and additives of IMSA.
Ryan, the pits are opening, and this has really put the cat amongst the pigeons.
It has. Those that got in are looking really good right now, and I think this helps the Lexus guys out too. Remember, we were worried about what their fuel mileage would be. I think if this yellow goes long enough, they should be all right. Before the pits get busy, real quick, want to also cover off in GTD. Philip Ellis, with that undercut, did leapfrog Mario Farnbacher. Yeah. So Windward, after the first lap where they were shuffled back, has recovered nicely, and I think they will cycle to the lead in the class.
97 minutes of green flag racing has come to an end now with 54 minutes to go. Arjuna is down in the pit lane as the GTD Pro cars head for their last stops.
Slightly unusual to not see both the GT classes down at the same time, but this helps Rexy out considerably as AO Racing are throwing scrubbed Michelin tires onto the 77. Looks like stickers for the 65 as well as the 1 and the FAF Lamborghini. So, bit of an interesting call here. AO Racing thinking the scrub tires will help them, and Rexy beats the Lexus off a pit lane. Paul Miller's number 1's going to roll off third with the 65 and the FAF Lamborghini in tow. But I thought this would help Rexy out. Didn't realize just how much they would gain.
Red light at the end of the pit lane, so no one can go anywhere at the moment. They have to wait for the green light at the end of the pit lane. And why? I think Rexy ran through the end of the pit lane. I think that was a red light at the end of pit lane. Well, certainly everybody behind AO Racing and Lauren Heinrich stopped. Now the rest of the cars are going through. Wonder if we've got to look at that and see where the light was and whether it had just gone left just gone red. We're not entirely certain why that BMW came to a halt. However, a number of people, thank you, Dave Alcock and Kuiper Hoffman and Tyler Kinghorn, all opining that might have been a turbo failure. He said he had no power, which might have meant the turbo was playing up. Turbo failure, engine oil onto a hot exhaust. That'll do it. I
can't help you with that, John, but real quick, I did want to correct something. I also was confused by this, but the 4 Corvette did not have the penalty. Remember, it was the 77 that was penalized for the contact with the 4.
Yes.
So that means those 2 stops for the 4 and Milner are valid, and they are legitimately then running 1-2 in the class.
Yeah, exactly so. Thank you for that. Hearing on the Pits to Car radio that Klaus Bachler, check that, Lauren Heinrich for AO Racing, is telling the team it was green, it went red, it went back to green. That's what he's saying. Now, at Sebring, I seem to remember, we had some confusion about the pit lane being open or closed for the leading Porsches. Let's hope it's not a recurrence of that. There is a camera that looks at that for race control, so they will know what was actually there, regardless of what the button said was there. So that will be looked at. GTD pits are open. Arjuna with about, almost all of the GTD field.
And the 12 Lexus beats everyone out by a country mile. I'm assuming they came in, John, just to top off a bit of fuel and keep themselves a bit safer mentally. Then Turner Motorsports off and away. Next, they do look like they've done tires, as have the Conquest Racing Ferrari, the Lamborghini for Wayne Taylor Racing, and AWA in that 13. Remember, they were at the back slightly earlier, but they've found themselves in contention with the Bob Aiken Award, the automatic invite to Le Mans, tied in points coming into this weekend. There's a lot at stake between the 2 Bronze Cup entries in this WeatherTech GT class.
The Parker Thompson number 12 Lexus RCF had only been out on track for 10 laps. So you're absolutely right. It would have been, even with this yellow, it would have still been a bit tight for them. So they've topped off and beaten everyone who needed more fuel. Fuel goes in at a standard rate. There's a full time for each of the cars, which is also part of the balance of performance. So the sad sight of the BMW, Max Hesse, becomes the first retirement, actually. As we reported in the Pelotti mid-race recap, we had all 23 cars running at the hour and 20 minute mark. IMSA taking the opportunity to get out the John Deere sweeper and take off some of the tyre debris from off the racing line. Now, what does this do when we've not yet reordered the cars? We're doing that now. So remember what I gave you as the VP in-race update before. Here's how they're going to come back to green at the Michelin GT Challenge at VIR. Some hour 51 and a half minutes since Bibendum waved the check at the green flag, excuse me. It will be the 2 Corvettes, 1 and 2. Alexander Sims in the 3, leads from Tommy Milner in the 4. The pole sitting Dragon Speed Ferrari. That car has pace. Albert Costa has shown pace. The 81 then in 3rd. Sebastian Priaulx up to 4th position. He started the race, and that early stop for them, just before the yellows came out, but it was a little while before when Rockenfeller jumped out of that car. Seb has been in that car now for, I think, 7 laps. But he's got enough fuel. The VP fuel tank, fuel level in the tank will be fine. Now, Alan Prosser, king of the screen grab, has found a bit of tape that looks like a green light for Rexy, and now we're hearing from race control the pit exit light is malfunctioning. So that report we had from Lauren Heinrich of red, green, red may have been entirely correct. At that point, you would normally put somebody there with a flag if they had known at that point. So, with Max Hesse out of the race for Paul Miller Racing in the 48, let's go to 9th position. Lauren Heinrich for AO and Rexy in 5th. Unlikely to get a penalty then. Ben Barnicut in the number 14, Vassar Sullivan Lexus in 6th. Madison Snow in 7th. Hasn't worked out for them, has it? Staying out. Chris Mace for Ford Multimatic in the 65. Ford Mustang GT, and Andrea Caldarelli for Pfaff Motorsport. Phil Ellis leads the class over Forte Racing. What a comeback from Windward Racing. Started second, got bumped down to, I think, 9th, certainly 7th or 8th at one stage, and now back in front of the motor race. Russell Ward did his part. The team have done their part. Got to be a BDO No Strategy Award contender. Forte Racing with the 78 Lamborghini. They've done well to hold on to second. Another great bit of driving and strategy from Harter Racing, who also dropped back after that first lap kerfuffle. They're back up into third, and they've been there or thereabouts. Inception up to 4th in the number 70, Fred Schandorf, having taken over from Brendan Arib. Kenton Cook, triage competition. That's another comeback drive for the 021 car. That car with a penalty early on and has done its 2 pit stops. Robert McGuinness will finish the race for the number 66 Ford Mustang of Gradient Racing. He's in 6th position. Ahead of Parker Thompson for Lexus. And Vassar Sullivan, number 12. Robbie Foley for Turner Motorsport, number 96. Another car who had a penalty. Daniel Serra for Conquest Racing, the number 34 car, in 9th position, minus a door mirror. Danny Formal in 10th for the number 45 Lamborghini Huracan. AWA in 13th, Matthew Bell now fueled to the end. Elliot Skier in 13th for the Wright Motorsport 120, and the final car running is the DXDT Corvette. In the 36 car is Robert Wickens. So we'll now have to start thinking, gentlemen, about the BDO Nose Strategy Award. And as I've mentioned those 3 letters, a very happy birthday in advance to Brad Knight from BDO. It's his birthday next week, so it's falling between events. So we'll wish him the best now. And indeed, we do now have a red flag at the end of pit lane, as I suggested would have to happen. So happy birthday, Brad Knight from BDO for next week. I know you'll be listening in. Right, Ryan. 43 minutes to go. The class split is done. Everyone is fueled to the end. The lights are out on the Ford Mustang GTD safety car. Alexander Sims was in 5 laps ago. Tommy Milner was in 4 laps ago, as was Albert Costa. Seb Prio 5 laps. Lauren Heinrich now right back in it, having only come in 2 laps ago, as with Ben Barnicut, Madison Snow, Chris Meese, Andrea Caldarelli. He was in a little while ago. What was that? 4 or 5 laps ago. So all of those people, because the class splits bring them back together, those people who didn't stop are disadvantaged, but not by much. And they do have a tyre advantage now for the last 42, 43 minutes.
At least a little bit of one. Keep in mind, we do know that Heinrich is on scuffed tires. I'm not sure about all the others, but most of the laps that the front runners have on the tires have been behind the safety car because they pitted right before this full course yellow. But what I find interesting is in both classes, the points leaders lead the race. Sims has not won yet this year in spite of being the points leader. So we'll have every motivation to try and go for it. And then Philip Ellis finds himself in the lead, but in the situation that he so loathes, as he told Arjuna earlier, where he restarts despite being one of the faster cars in the field behind the back of the GTD Pro field. This could get really interesting here as we come to the restart.
Well, Andrea Caldarelli has dropped away from Chris Meese, and it looks very much as though there was a little gap there as well between Caldarelli and Phil Ellis. Just made himself a 4 or 5 car gap as we come back to green with 41 minutes and 41 seconds. It's the two bright yellow Corvettes from the Evel Knievel livery of Dragon Speed. Then, new for this weekend, the carbon livery and the ultra lime accents for Sebastian Priaulx. Real chance here for Priaulx and Rockenfeller to get on the podium. Then it's Rexy. What a turnaround for them. They've not had the pace this week at all, but they knew they could get in the fight if they played the strategy. Some of that was decided for them with penalties, etc., early on, but they have rolled the dice, played their cards in the best way possible. Sims pulls away from his teammate. This is the championship leader. Now, if you're Tommy Milner, you're not going to challenge the championship leader who's your teammate. You are going to sit in the middle of the road as much as you can, and Albert Costa knows that. And he had a look down the inside to the second part of the oak tree at turn 12. Couldn't get alongside. Wow. This is going to get feisty for the next 40 minutes. If we get 40 minutes of green flag racing, A, I'll be impressed, and B, we will have been entertained, Ryan Marine.
Yeah, certainly, and this is really important here with the championship in mind, this fight we're watching. Sims is the points leader. The man chasing him, though, and who's been on the tear as of late, is Costa, who sits third. So you're right, I don't think we'll see Milner challenge Sims, but this is a really big moment here where Tommy can play tail gunner and try and defend his championship-leading teammate, who's just up the road in front. Looked like on the restart as well, John, Philip Ellis maybe backed up a little bit to create some space to the GTD Pro field, and he used that to good effect. He's been able to hang on since the restart, but now is going to have a bunch of traffic to contend with.
And this is where Phil Ellis's problems begin. And it begins with Andrea Caldarelli in the FAF Motorsport Lamborghini Huracan. He's right with that car now, not battling for class position, but battling to keep his class lead and defend the championship lead. And I understand why we do this in some respects, but it just sometimes, it's very track dependent on whether it works or not, and whether it gives the intended result. There's an unintended consequence of splitting these two classes. I know why we did it, because the GTD Pro cars sometimes, if they were behind the GTDs, we could get them split up, and effectively the whole GTD Pro field could lose a lap to the GTDs. But it does affect the racing, and it does affect some of the choices that are made. As I say, it's track dependent. The drivers, it's a really good article on Sportscar 365 earlier in this race week, and the drivers are pretty split actually between it, and it's not just between GTD Pro drivers and GTD drivers. And another fire, and this is a huge incident for the 45 Dex Imaging Lamborghini. This is a full course yellow. Already the driver out. I heard the squeal of tyres, and Danny Formal went off backwards, but the car was ablaze as it was going across the grass. It set the grass alight at the top of the roller coaster. That is a significant conflagration in the engine compartment. The AMR safety truck, the Chevy safety truck, is already there. Something's gone wrong at the back of that car, I suspect, then has leaked onto the back tyres and had it spin. Danny Formal out of the car, over the barriers, and he has got some burns, and he's asking for some attention. He felt the heat in the driver's compartment there, and he's been attended to immediately by the AMR safety crew. Well, that is a bizarre incident, but clearly something, Ryan Marine, that happened long before that Lamborghini got to the tyre wall at the top of the hill. And this is going to be a lengthy full course yellow.
I suspect you're right. And wow, we don't see big fires like this in modern race cars much these days, thankfully. But it was amazing. As soon as that car came to a stop, Danny was out and sprinting away from the cockpit. There were flames all around him, and he went and leapt over the Armco barrier, which was prudent. He got him to safety. He doesn't know necessarily if it's gone full course yellow yet, but I think it's also kept him out of the immediate vision of the medical team, which has subsequently found him, and they're attending to him now. But really scary stuff, John, and that's the kind of thing that makes your heart stop a little bit anytime you see a fire like that.
Now, Danny is up and walking around, and he beckoned over the safety crew. He'd felt the heat on his hands and face there, and for a moment I actually thought there were still flames around him that he perhaps hadn't realised, but that was, I'm pleased to say, not the case. Car was engulfed in flames, and of course it spun and went backwards, and therefore, Ryan, the flames were being blown back into the driver's compartment. Normally, if you're going forwards, the fire's behind you, but it did actually get into Danny's side of the car there, and no wonder he wanted out of that car quickly.
Oh, my goodness, that is harrowing to watch, even in the replay, knowing that he got out of the car. Really scary stuff, and watching now a look from on board a trailing car. You just see a big fireball and going off to the side of the road. That has to be so disconcerting. I think that was Robert Wickens we were watching on board with, and oh my goodness, that is an awful lot of flame. Remember, these cars just filled up with fuel too under that most recent full course yellow prior to this one. So yeah, there's a lot of combustible material in the car at that stage when whatever it was went wrong.
It looked, from Robert Wickens' view, 2 or 3 cars back, as though the flames started just as he was coming to the breaking point at the top of the hill. The thumbs up from Danny Formal. I'm so pleased to see he's fine. He ripped off his helmet, which was already discoloured by the smoke, and his bright yellow gloves that he traditionally wears. And that really worried me. So, excellent work by the AMR safety crew. He's in the ambulance and he'll be taken for the statutory checkup at the Infield Medical Centre. But that looked like some kind of catastrophic failure at the back right-hand side of that Lamborghini. That is the side that we're fuel filling this weekend. But whatever happened, it happened very quickly. And the car must have been fluid that came down, because the car spun immediately. I don't think that was Danny slinging it backwards. They're still damping down that car. Water onto the car because of the heat that those very bright orange flames were generating. Superb work from AMR safety team. And indeed, we should say it, by the track services, who are already there with the rollback. Well, that was as scary an incident I've seen without impact ever, probably. We're back under yellow, of course, for this. No pass arounds required, and I don't even think we'll need to reorder the field. The heat on the car enough to begin to discolour the inside of the windscreen, and enough heat on that to begin to affect the thin plastic tear-off sheets that are put on there, and to have bubbled some of those up. You wouldn't normally have them applied like that. They're normally see-through. I'm absolutely certain there was a leak in that car as it was going across the grass, because it was trailing at one stage a line of flame and setting the grass alight. Well, the good news is Danny's out and he seems to be fine. Scorch marks all across the roof, the windscreen and the back right-hand side of that Dex imaging car. We'll keep an eye on that as it's recovered back to the pit lane. We're going to get a look at the side that it was the worst on. That's all the way down the left-hand side, has got very bad heat damage, and particularly around the engine cover and the fuel filler. And there's still water dripping off it, of course. That car will go back to the pit lane. I'm sure there'll be a serious investigation by the team to find out the cause of that fire. Let's pick up some news from down in the pit lane. Let's go to Ferrari and to Onofrio Triasi.
Before that, John, just a quick update. Wayne Taylor Racing, no indication in the data on what that cause of the fire was, so they are going to have to dig into that. But let's catch up with the 021, which pitted just before a previous caution and sits in a very good spot in Onofrio.
Yeah, we're super happy with our pit strategy. You know, we got lucky with the yellow right there at the perfect time, so we can go through the end full pace. Kenton did a great job making up those 2 spots from 5th up to 3rd, so hopefully we can keep moving the car forward.
And has he said anything about how that car's feeling as he looks to try and make it 2 wins in a row for the Ferrari?
We would love that. I mean, he's doing a great job out there. He says the car feels great. Obviously, everybody else is pretty quick, so we need to stay clean, no more penalties, and keep going.
Obviously, final round of the championship. Petit Le Mans, you'll need an extra driver. Any word as to who you've got lined up to potentially join the 021 crew?
Yeah, so we have Indy actually next that we'll get to see who's coming into the car at that point. But at the moment, we're going to keep it a surprise, but the car will be there.
I tried, John. The truth serum not working.
Good job. Safety car lights are out on the liquid carbon Ford GTD. Now, we're going to have to keep an eye on Phil Ellis again this time to see if he leaves just a few cars lengths between himself and the Lamborghini of Andrea Caldarelli. It worked nicely for him last time. He can't obviously drop off half a lap, but he'll want to be there. They are 2 separate classes, so having a slight break between the classes, I think race control will look on that as expedient. Alexander Sims and Tommy Milner, the 2 Corvettes. Albert Costa, Ferrari in 3rd. Seb Prio for Ford Multimatic. And in GTD, Phil Ellis of Winwood. Forte Racing's Lamborghini. Triazi competition. Kenton Cook. Good run back for them. So Kenton made up a couple of places in the short run after the last restart. So they're right in the shout for BD or no strategy as well. Go back to green. Alexander Sims again gets on the power early, hoping that his teammate's going to give him a little bit of breathing space, and he has. Down towards the horseshoe. Rexy pulls out of line to defend rather than attack from Madison Snow, who's back in the fight, and then he goes wide at the exit of turn number 1. Madison Snow in the BMW trying to get round the left, now the right. Big defensive driving by Lauren Heinrich, putting his car exactly where Madison Snow does not want it to be. Decent restart too by Phil Ellis, who was half a second ahead of Mario Farnbacher as they went across the line. 2/10 further back, Kenton Cook, Tom Gamble, another half a second back, and then 3/10 back to Fred Schandorf. We've got a few teams in GTD in particular who are looking at really good results this weekend, Ryan, and a nice clean restart with just on 28 minutes left when we got to the green flag.
Well, you rightly pointed out that on the previous restart, Kenton Cook was the man on the move, picked up a couple of spots to get around Tom Gamble and into third. And right now he's putting a lot of pressure on Mario Farnbacher. That could be the car to watch. And Onofrio Triarsi was super quick in clean air with that car after their drive-through penalty earlier in the race. And now they've got the track position back with some clever strategy. They know the car is fast. And Kenton, who told us he wasn't thinking about the championship until we asked him about it, has to be thinking about it just that little bit more now. Although the man everyone's chasing in GTD, the team everyone is chasing, Windward, continues to hold the leading class.
It's Ryan Marine in the Ford Performance Global Broadcast Centre with me, John Hindorf. Just a reminder of our Porsche keys to the race. Fuel mileage and the tyres we're going to play into this. It's largely now being negated by the last couple of full course cautions, but it was interesting to see in that, particularly in that nearly 100 minutes of green flag racing, penalties for contact and pit lane penalties. Well, they have played a part, but it's undoubtedly been track position, which was our number one Porsche key to the race, that has been at the forefront, Ryan, of everybody's mind today. There's even been some tricky pit strategy, some short fueling to get people ahead of their rivals.
Yeah, if you don't have it, you got to find a way to get it, and oftentimes that's with the timing of the pit stop. Right now, though, that's all done, and it's just a matter of getting it sorted out on track. Man, Kenton Cook is looking really aggressive. The body language of that Ferrari, John, looks super well sorted, and he had a look to the inside of Farnbacher earlier in the lap. Couldn't quite get alongside, but he does look awfully threatening.
Still 25 minutes to go. A lot can happen between now and the checkered flag. And the checkered flag, remember, is just the end of the race, but the start of the conversation. Hashtag Michelin PRT. And your questions, points of order, points arising will shape that post-race show. We'll get some interviews as well. And we'll go to the pit lane now. Two fires in one race. Neil Verhagen was the first car that had the problem. Sorry, that's the other car in the Paul Miller Racing. Let's go down to Neil now, down in the pit lane.
And Neil started this race, but strategy and timing of cautions hasn't necessarily been kind to the number one, and you find yourself currently in sixth. What's Madison saying over the radio as he pushes in this last portion of the race?
Yeah, I think he's just fully focused right now. Not too much chatter coming off of Madison right now. Obviously caught out a little bit by that yellow, which didn't help us at all, but we're trying to recover the best we can now.
Do you have any word on what happened to the 48 just yet, or is that still an investigation in progress?
No, there's no words yet. It's still under investigation, so we need to figure out what the issue is there.
What was the first stint like? Because I was looking at the times and I wasn't quite sure. Were you managing the pace? Were you trying to save tires? What were you trying to do?
Yeah, DEG was pretty high today, so just trying to get the tires to go as far as possible was the main goal. So in the beginning, yes, a little bit of management, but at the end, you're fully pushing, and the times were not that great. So it was. I was hoping for it to be a bit better, but I guess it was the same for everybody.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
That team with mixed fortunes today ran 1 and 2. The 48 now is the first official retirement. The paperwork's been put in to be followed by, I'm sure, the Wayne Taylor Racing Lamborghini, the number 45, and two cars that the teams will be pulling apart to try and find the causes of their incidents. Highly unusual to see bright orange flame on a racing car, and we've had it twice in this race. Should point out the safety systems of both of the cars clearly did kick in, and the AMR safety crew We always call them the best in the business, and I always say to them every race, and I know they'll be tuned in on Sirius XM 206. I always say to them, I hope you have a really boring race and we don't have to talk about you at all. But when they do, the men and women of the EMR safety crew think of only one thing, and that is the safety of the drivers concerned. And they sprung into action like a well-oiled machine, like the well-oiled machine that they are. And our thanks to them. Most people run away from fire or danger. The AMR safety crew are the ones who are heading towards it at top speed. Got a lot of respect for the men and women who keep our drivers safe. So Alexander Sims by nearly a second now, Ryan. And 47.2 for the top 6 cars last time around. There's a little more pace in all of those cars. Maybe half a second or so for Sims. He's had a 46.3, but they're not hanging about here at the moment. They are using some of the pace that they've got in those relatively new Michelin tyres.
Right, so we've talked so much about how important tyre conservation was going to be. The task here in this final stint got easier due to the 2 yellows, especially the length of the most recent one. But even still, let's keep an eye on it here as we get to the tail end of the stint. Everyone has said all weekend long, you get to the last 15, 20 minutes of a stint, and that's when you really earn your money driving one of these cars here this weekend. Just with the drop-off, it's the nature of the track. And quite frankly, it's good for racing to have a little bit of tire drop-off, so we say thanks to Michelin for that. But really curious to see who can look after those Michelins here for the final 21 minutes.
And we're still cogitating on the recipient of the BDO Nose Strategy Award. There's a pass for second position. Albert Costa, we've said he's had a quick car. Now that's significant. No doubt to me that Tommy Milner was trying to keep back the marauding hordes behind him. He's lost one position, and it looks like Seb Prio's having a go as well. He was reinstalled after Mike Rockenfeller did the middle stint in the 64 Ford Mustang GT3 from Multimatic. But Costa's gone through, and let's see what the Ferrari and Albert Costa have got. He needs to find just on a second to get back to the lead of this race. Confirmation of that new second place then. Albert Costa goes through and is already flashing the lights, almost telegraphing to Alexander Sims, you haven't got your backstop. No tail gunner now. Stand by to be menaced by the Modena magic. And another Ferrari that's lost a door mirror. They do stick out slightly further than the side of the car. They're a thing of great beauty, I've got to tell you, because they're aerodynamically tuned on the GT3 cars, and they are a bit vulnerable out there, and the carbon fibre has been snapped off, and the red of the signifying that it's a GTD Pro car, of course, the red door mirror has disappeared from the driver's side, so possibly not the most important one there. So let's see now, 47 flat for Sims, 47.8 last time around for Albert Costa, but he did have to make the pass on Tommy Milner, who holds on to third for the moment. Looks like the gap is remaining fairly constant. Alexander Sims will have had the word that now it's the Ferrari behind him in GTD. Phil Ellis still hasn't got by Andrea Caldarelli, and he's half a second behind him. No, check that, he's a second behind him now. So he's got some breathing space ahead of him, but Mario Farnbacher, Super Mario Farnbacher, in the Forte Racing Ferrari is only half a second back, and then it's Triage's Kenton Cook in the championship conversation now. He's another 2/10 further back, and Tom Gamble also with the Aston Martin Vantage and Casper Stevenson in the conversation for that GTD Drivers' Championship. He's another 1/10 back. So the top 4 in GTD separated by just on 6-7 tenths of a second. Plenty of action going on here with the last 17.5 minutes still to go. New fastest lap of the race, Albert Costa. There's your answer, Ryan. 46.6 against a 47.2. 8 tenths taken out of the leader, but Alexander Sims had the bit of the hurry up and he'd stretched the lead. It's back down to 1.1 seconds now, but Costa has had the word. He knows what his job is right now, and the job is to close down and pass that bright yellow car ahead of him.
Costa inching closer, sector by sector. Took another tenth or so off through sector 1. It was a robust move to get alongside Tommy Milner and get up to second place, but that's what the situation required. He knows he needs to finish ahead of the Corvette that's leading this race to make any headway in the championship. And remember, he was down by 108 points 3 races ago. This being the 4th now in this stretch. He's been on the podium 3 straight times. That's allowed him to cut the deficit down into about the 30-point range. It's actually less than that with the qualifying points that he got, courtesy of Giacomo Altoe in qualifying yesterday when they scored the pole position. Right now, he's drawing a bead on the leader of this race, who is the championship leader, but has not won a race yet this year, John. So think about how desperate Alexander Sims is to keep that Corvette up front.
53 points, the gap between first and second in GTD Pro as it stands right now. And another 140 odd back to Bachler and Heinrich in third. They're 191 off the lead. Kenton Cook has got to be closing in as well for Triazi. Remember, he's raced for 2 different teams this year, but he personally does get the points for the Drivers' Championship. So he is closing in as well, and at the moment Kenton is the next best scorer. Excuse me, that's the GTD category I'm talking about, my apologies. So close in both of the championships. So the 3 Corvette team leading the championship. Albert Costa on his own in the number 81 car because of the rotating policy on co-drivers. Giacomo Altoe scoring the pole, but both drivers get the points for that. It should be mentioned, not just the qualifying drivers. Now that battle for the GTD lead getting spicy. 4 cars, make that 5 cars now with Inception hoving into view. Fred Schandorf wants a little bit of the action at the front of the field. And he's bringing with him Robbie Foley, who has Robert McGuinness behind him. This GTD battle is forming up line astern from Phil Ellis, Ryan.
It's interesting. I thought Ellis, once he got to the front, would have the pace to run away, and maybe now he's starting to for the first time. It seemed like Farnbacher was putting the pressure on, but now Ellis does have a bit of a gap. It's grown up over half a second, and now the fight might be for second place. We're a very hungry and in high form right now. Kenton Cook has the Lamborghini of Mario Farnbacher in the crosshairs.
Philip Ellis is one of those drivers who, no matter what's going on around him, he always seems to have an excess of processing capacity, if that makes sense. I often say about all drivers, but particularly drivers who work like Philip, they are clocked at a different speed, to use processing technology terminology. And I just wonder if he has deliberately been pacing himself and possibly even backing up Mario Farnbacher into Kenton Cook and Tom Gamble and Fred Schandorf et al. So that battle starts to heat up a little bit. He's also given himself a couple of seconds now, 2.5 seconds on Andrea Caldarelli. Lost half a second to Caldarelli on the last lap. So he has got some room to accelerate into if he does come under pressure. Let's see how that one plays out in the last 12.5 minutes. And Kenton Cook, by dint of where he is at the moment, is 248 points away from Russell Ward and Phil Ellis. That's just over 50 points away from Casper Stevenson, who's on his own in second position, some 101 points behind the GTD leaders as they stand at the moment. We've got 12 minutes to go. Let's head into the pit lane. Here's Arjuna.
A quick catch-up with Rexy and Klaus Bachler after a penalty early and then having to make the strategy work to get up to 5th position. I know you haven't necessarily had the pace this weekend, but is this the best result you could really salvage?
Yeah, I mean, it's not over yet. Still 10 or 15 minutes to go. For sure, P5 is not something we need in terms of fight for the championship if your contenders are P1, P2, but in the end, nothing we can do. We don't have the pace, we don't have more in like this. I think when you watch, you can see it. We cannot really follow the others on the straight line, and we just try our best. And the car was amazing. The team does an amazing job, and yeah, we can just hope for the next races that it gets better.
One of the things I noticed on pit lane was that scrub tires went on to Rexy in that final stint. Is that something you guys feel benefits the car as opposed to stickers in the closing stages?
Yeah, it helps us. Maybe it's because of our concept, but it's not a big difference, but in the end we just try it.
Thanks, Klaus.
Certain sense of resignation there from Klaus Bachler, but still prepared to talk to Arjuna Kankapati, doing the hard yards in the pit lane. Air temperature now 30 Celsius, which is 86 Fahrenheit, 99 Fahrenheit on the track. We've had some prolonged sunshine on the track, so that's coming up. And half a second taken out of the leader by Albert Costa last time around, and the gap is about 0.3 of a second by my eyes as they come onto the front stretch now. Ryan Marine, we've got a battle for the last 10.5 minutes.
We certainly do. Now that he's clear of Tommy Milner, Albert Costa can just focus forward on trying to close in on the Corvette. The lead down to 0.7 of a second now with still 10 minutes to work with. This is a former class winner at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. He won his class at Petit Le Mans last year from Barcelona, Spain. Albert Costa, what a season he's put together here with the Dragon Speed team. Their first full season in GTD Pro, and they are very much in the title fight. This is the battle for the championship. It's also the battle for the race win.
It's nice when those things kind of work out at this stage of the season, so we don't have to have too many different storylines going at the same time. Checkered flag will end the race, but start the conversation for Michelin post-race tech. Hashtag Michelin PRT. And if you're watching on the world feed or on the video player at imsaradio.com, switch over to RS2 on the audio player. We'll use your comments and questions in our post-race tech show. Michelin post-race tech then at the conclusion of our World Feed TV. We'll have some interviews from down in pit lane with Arjuna. Ryan, Arjuna and I will pick through what we've seen and use your comments and questions to shape that show. 1 lap difference in terms of tyre life between the Corvette that leads and the Ferrari in second. The advantage by 3.5 miles is with the car in second place and Albert Costa's Dragon Speed Ferrari. So what I'm saying really is there's no advantage tyre-wise. They are both now, of course, mid-engined cars, and they both now have 8.5 minutes, which is going to be about, it's either 5 or 6 laps from here. The computer is predicting 4 laps from here. It will very much depend on when they come to the white flag and how much time is left. Phil Ellis has stretched his lead to 0.6 of a second as the inception ration comes in. Now this is interesting. One of the things that Bob Barfield was talking about in the drivers' meeting, as well as contact was moving under braking and blocking. And Fred Schandorf has been booked for blocking. And that is key in the Bronze Cup race, because they are now behind AWA, and they came into this weekend, Ryan Marine told us, tied on points for that prestigious invitation to Le Mans next year.
Yeah, that is massive. Really good eye there, John, to pick that up, because we really haven't seen much of the AWA car. It seemingly hasn't been their day, and a 10th place finish in class isn't really what they came for. But if they can finish ahead of their rivals going for that award, for that automatic invitation to Le Mans, that turns a mediocre day into a really good day. So that is a costly penalty for Schandorf, who at the time was embroiled in a battle and had been. We got glimpses of it for a few laps with Robbie Foley for Turner Motorsport, but ultimately was deemed to have moved in a manner that was not to the liking of race control, and he's made his trip down the pit lane.
Picking up with the pace by Phil Ellis, has stretched his gap to 0.6 of a second at the head of the GTD field. It's a Lamborghini in the hands of Mario Farnbacher in second, and the 021 Triazzi Competizione and Kenton Cook. But he's under pressure now from Casper Stevenson's teammate Tom Gamble, who's racing for Casper here. Again, there's been a variety of core drivers with Casper this year in the Heart of Racing Vantage. Got a couple of situations where drivers singly are in contention for the championship. It used to happen years ago that only the driver who qualified got the qualifying points, but in the previous iteration of IMSA in the American Le Mans Series, that didn't seem at all fair. So that was changed over quite a few years ago now, and I think that's much more equitable, that both drivers get the qualifying points. Clearly both drivers can't qualify every race, but those additional points, as we've chronicled, can be really important. Now, where is the back of the Caldarelli Pfaff Motorsports Lamborghini? Answer, not that far up the road. And what was a couple of seconds has definitely come down. Meantime, here's the battle for second in GTD, coming up the long back straight to the top of the roller coaster. Just a little check break from Mario Farnbacher in the Forte Racing Lamborghinis. He made sure at one of the important braking points on the circuit. There are 7 braking points here, and a couple of them you are doing very high speeds, including at turn 14, the top of the roller coaster. So you just tap the brake with your left foot to make sure that the brake pads haven't rattled away from the disc, from the rotor. Across the line, Phil Ellis, 3/4 of a second now on Farnbacher, who has only 3/10 on Kenton Cook. They're all using their tyres at the front of the field. The charge forward from Albert Costa has stalled to just around half a second to 6/10. And Tommy Milner doing a great job, by the way, hanging on to third position at the moment from Sebastian Prior, who will want to get on the podium for him and for Mike Rockenfeller in the Ford Multimatic Ford Mustang GT3. Lauren Heinrich trying to hang on, but just dropping away from the top 5, but staying ahead by a couple of seconds from Madison Snow and the Paul Miller Racing BMW. Paul Miller looked at, they had this race under control early on, Ryan, running 1 and 2. I said formation flying. It was a bit like they were doing a demonstration run in that first half of the race.
Well, it was a double whammy for them, right? We had the 48 go out with an apparent mechanical issue, and it had been slow on the track for a few laps, and I think we even brought up the fact that some cars were making their way to the pit lane maybe a little bit earlier in the window than they would ideally, but it was covering in case the 48, which clearly had some kind of lingering issue, stopped on track. And no sooner did we say that did the car come to a halt. The ultimate bitter pill, though, is that one of the cars that did not take advantage of it was the team car. They stayed out, and then they were caught out by that yellow, which cost them the track position that they had held really since the very beginning of the race. So the one incident had catastrophic implications for the entire Paul Miller team.
It'll be white flag next time around for Alexander Sims, who goes into the left hook, still holding, in the context of this race, a comfortable lead. It's more than 10 cars lengths now, timed at 0.8 of a second at the line. The battle continues for all of the podium positions in GTD, but at the moment it looks to me as though Phil Ellis has played an absolute blinder and managed to hold the gap back to the Forte Racing Lamborghini. But now it's closed in as Mario Farnbach is under pressure himself from Kenton Cook. This could be a complete turnaround, or none of them could be on the podium. And Tom Gamble is fighting Robbie Foley for Turner Motorsport. So that's Aston versus BMW for 4th and 5th. That could yet be an upgrade for either of those two if there are any low percentage lunges from the trio in front at the Oak Tree. 1, 2 and 3. As quick as I said that is where they went through the apex of the final part. Oh my goodness. What a run this has been for Alexander Sims. And we still have to pick our BDO Nose Strategy Award. No wins this season for the championship leaders. The white flag is in hand and waving. 3.5 miles to go. And at the line, it's a 1.5 seconds. Albert Costa, he's not going to get back to the leader. And what about GTD coming onto the curving front stretch now? For once, a little bit of breathing space between himself and the Forte Lamborghini, but more importantly, the gap that he's managed, that Phil Ellis has managed between himself and the back of the GTD Pro field has been masterful, absolutely masterful. And he now has 3/4 of a second, and he's not going to catch the traffic this time around. And we're hearing of a penalty, and this is huge. Another blocking penalty. Mario Farnbacher called for blocking in 2nd position. So Triazzi are now in 2nd position. They can't serve the drive-through. It will be converted into a 30-second time penalty. And that means the pressure effectively is off the leader, because the Forte car is not the car that's behind him, but he's holding up the car that is. What drama in the closing stages here at VIR. Ryan Marine, what a victory for Corvette.
Well, this one's been a long time coming. They've been fixtures on the podium all season, just haven't put the full race together. That's about to end in just a few corners' time. Big statement here for Pratt Miller, Corvette Racing, and this man Alexander Sims.
Out to the final corner. It's been a full team effort. From the engine change in the 4 to them running 1 and 2. They'll finish 1 and 3. Dragon Speed have had great pace all the weekend, but they have not been able to get across and get by the Corvette number 3. And the championship lead ekes out a bit. And for the first time, they've got a win as well in GTD. It's another victory for Winward Racing. Russell Ward did the start, got pushed way down, and they used pace, strategy and guile to get themselves back up. But what a final stint by Phil Ellis after the restart, as they were concerned, and Phil Ellis telling us in Countdown to Green that he was concerned about the restart and hitting the back of the GTD profile. He managed that gap brilliantly and ends up winning by a second from Kenton Cook. Tom Gamble will take 3rd place points for him and for Casper Stevenson for the Hartner Racing team. Robbie Foley in 4th and 5th for Gradient, in Robert McGuinness in 5th position with Jensen Altzman. And just looking through to see, Seb Prior confirmed in 4th position. Let's hear from some of the drivers involved that they'll be standing on the podium later for the Michelin GT Challenge at VIR. Here's Arjuna.
And maybe we need to rename him Mr. VIR. That is a 5th class win at the Virginia International Raceway for Antonio Garcia as the entirety of the Pratt & Miller team celebrates. But a team effort here, Antonio, to finally stand on the top step of the podium in 2025 and really boosting the championship hopes.
Yeah, I mean, feels like VIR is always a talisman or a joker for us. So it's been a year since the last win. We've been chasing that win forever. We always had something going on. Some, I don't know, damage, this and that, but perfect race. I mean, we really pay out at the beginning of the race where we jump everybody on the pits, and then flawless race, a bit like in the last yellow probably. But yeah, very, very happy. Alex drove a fantastic job. Yeah, we deserve that, and I think it's very, very happy for Team Chevy and everybody.
And it's a proper team effort, right? Because you've been part of this Pratt & Miller effort for a long time. 1 and 3, a double podium as well for the team.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's always good. Good for the championship and good for the manufacturers. It's a shame we couldn't get a 1-2. That would have been maybe like the last piece of the cake. But, I mean, I think we have to be proud with today's race.
Drink it in. Congratulations.
Whew. Well, that's blocking penalty. Sticks Mario Farnbacher all the way to the back of GTD. Just to confirm then, Windward extend their championship lead. Kenton Cook into third position in the championship chase with that second for Triazi competition. Remember, he started his championship with another team. Tom Gamble bringing home points for his Heart of Racing teammate Casper Stevenson, who's also in the Drivers' Championship points race in GTD. And at the front of the field, the top 9 were all the GTD Pro cars after the restart. Corvette and Pratt Miller 1 and 3. Some brilliant pit work, some brilliant strategy, and keeping the Ferrari at bay. You've got to give Tommy Milner some credit for that as well after that final restart, because those 3 or 4 laps that he held Albert Costa back were key. Sebastian Priaulx with Rockenfeller up into 4th, then EO Racing with a car that had no right to be in 5th position on pace, but they'll take some points out of that. No luck for Paul Miller Racing. The number 1 car in 6th position had better pace than that, and of course the fiery end to the 48. Chris Meese and Fred Verveesch with no luck at all. See above comment for the Lexus and the Lamborghini. But Phil Ellis and Russell Ward extend their championship lead after a topsy-turvy race where Russell Ward was bumped down the field at the start. He's down on the pit wall with Arjuna.
Congratulations, Russell, but tell us about that opening stint of the race and dropping back and then fighting your way back forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I think we've, spoken about before. It's, you just get stacked up by the guys in front. I mean, you put in a good performance in qualifying, and then you have to, just give it up to somebody who's slower. So it's pretty frustrating, especially when you've got the sister car of our main competitor right in front of you. It's rough. So, it's lucky we were able to rebound from that because, without the awesome pit stops that the guys put in, I don't think we would be up here. So, hats off to the Windward crew for getting us back up there.
First win since Laguna Seca, 2 rounds left to go in the championship. Momentum's on your side, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, now it's perfect. So, exactly where we wanted to be.
He's going to go find Russell Ellis and celebrate in victory lane as the Windward 57 pulls its way in towards the podium, John.
Yeah, Russell Ward there with Phil Ellis just coming in to the pit lane. We've got to award the BDO No Strategy Award, just one for the 2 GTD classes. We've got nominees up and down here, Ryan. Certainly both of the Corvettes, possibly the Ford Multimatic racing car, EO Racing in 5th position, and in GTD, Windward, Triazi, Heart of Racing, all could be in with a shout. Where's your vote going?
Well, in my mind, I think Corvette Racing deserves the call because, as we heard from Garcia a little bit earlier in the show, he was pretty clever, saving some fuel, early in his first stint that made for a shorter early pit stop that got them some track position, and then they came in towards the early part of the window, but while the 48 BMW was having its problems, and consequently they got to the front of the field because of that call. They had made their pit stop when the race leaders had not. That cycled them to the front, and they never relinquished the lead from there. So it was a multifaceted strategic approach, and I think they hit it out of the park on every opportunity.
Arjuna, agree, disagree, throw someone else in the pot?
Hard to disagree, but I'll just throw another name out there because I want to give a shout out to Turner Motorsport. They had one of those early penalties in the rash of race control decisions that we thought was kind of setting the tone, and they fought their way back, John, to 4th position. Robbie Foley in pit lane, a remarkable 4 times. That's the best result for Turner Motorsport this season.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Ultimately, I don't think we can argue with the case put by Ryan Marine there, and so our BDO Knows Strategy Award for not one piece of strategy, essentially, is what Ryan's saying there. That started at the start of the race with Antonio Garcia. They had talked about it, and they had planned for it, if you will, and they executed it. So the winner of the race, somewhat unusually, wins our BDO Knows Strategy Award. Congratulations to Antonio Garcia, to Alexander Sims, and to the whole of the number 3 Corvette Racing by Pratt Miller team. Let's take another interview before we wrap things up here at the Michelin GT Challenge at VIR.
Alexander Sims and Antonio Garcia are celebrating, John, by putting that winner sticker on the car for the very first time. And I'm going to walk around and steal Alexander after a very impressive drive to the very end. Alexander, talked to Antonio a couple of minutes ago. First win in 2025. How does that feel?
Pretty awesome, honestly, to get our first win with Pratt Miller and Corvette in this program this year is great. It's been a good year so far, I've got to be honest, but nothing beats a win. So it's a really nice feeling with just a couple of races to go. It's a nice place to be.
How draining was that final stint for you? Because I can see the sweat coming off you right now.
Yeah, honestly, when Albert got past Tommy, I knew they were going to have some pace, and I had to do quali lap after quali lap there. Thankfully, I was able to keep the consistency. Towards the end, the tyres were starting to heat up pretty hard, just because of the nature of the circuit here. But great job by Pratt Miller. As I said, awesome to get our Corvette the first win of the year.
Congratulations.
Well, we'll keep Arjuna down around Victory Lane for some more interviews, which will come up on RS2 via the player at imsaradio.com as we hand the PA back to our colleagues here at VIR. Some final thoughts from you, Ryan, before we head to Michelin post-race tech.
Well, that was really exciting. We wondered at the outset, how would the directives from race control be received? How would that affect the race? And we saw it have an impact early on. We saw it have an impact late, too, with some of the blocking calls that had some consequences further down. But great result for Corvette Racing. That one was a long time coming. Big for them in the championship. Helps to stem the bleeding a little bit as Albert Costa had been closing in. And what about Windward? I mean, this season that they're putting together, very similar to last year, where they've just been super consistent all year long, but when the opportunity strikes, they're there to take the win. And I'd like to give a call as well to Gradient Racing. They come home 5th. Yep. Final race for this sprint pairing of Altsman and McGuinness. They had not finished better than 10th all season, John, so a 5th place result for them today. A great way to cap off their portion of the IMSA season.
Stay tuned for Michelin post-race tech. My thanks to everyone involved in our race broadcast, whether on site at Concord or back in London. Once again, the Michelin GT Challenge at VIR has given us the opportunity to focus in very tightly on the cars that we'd all like to have in our dream garage. Corvette have come out on top. Antonio Garcia is still the king of VIR. I'm John Hindhaugh. We'll see you.
This program is a Radio Show Limited production.